time and
There we go.
we have
I'll
to.
just start recording. We can ramble and I'll
Yeah,
just cut shit out. Yeah.
yeah, that's what I was figuring you were gonna do. So you're like,
Mhm.
dude, we can't have you complaining about Timmy all the time, dude. We got to talk about something other than that. I'd be like, yeah, well, you're right. So, but no, it's good to see you and talk to you, my friend. And yeah, man, but I was thinking about like we were going back and forth a little bit about this script and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
you almost have to think of Alpha Troop in particular Alpha Troop in three different deployments when you think about us. There's the first time were in Abuseta, and then we went to Caldwell, and then we went to Zagania. And you almost have to look at that as three different deployments that were right, back to back to back. And then the other part that we'd want to talk about is like 573 and what was 573 when we were in it, how it stood up, why it was so different, or, what was done right, what was done wrong. Um,
Mhm.
and then with me right now, I mean, I'm having a little trouble with some of my timelines on things. I'm like, God, I remember
Mhm.
this, but exactly when did it happen? I'm like, I get a little fuzzy on it. And I used to be like spot on. I like, no, I knew
Mhm.
exactly what, when, and where and everything. And now it's like, well, I remember doing it, but was it in
Mhm.
January or February? Where were we at? So you're going to have to bear with me a little bit. And if you correct me on something, I'm, you know, yeah, that's how it happened. That's how it happened. I mean, it's like I'll give you the best I can remember and stuff like that. So,
Yeah, there's no worries or pressure. I've been doing that. I forget a lot and I misspeak a lot too.
yeah,
Part of it is just time and place. Part of it is a lot of it, we didn't know at the time. Part of it's PTSD,
yeah,
because that does malform memories. So I've been throwing up captions to correct things when I catch them, or just to provide context and background for people that don't know, or even people that have forgotten like us. So yeah, don't worry about it. We'll just keep going, and I'll try not
yeah.
to
And
interrupt you.
no,
And we'll
no,
try and leave spaces too to make it easier to edit.
yeah,
Like you were saying, it's been difficult. Like with Kinzer's talk, and your talks can go very well with Kinzer's because it's a lot of the same material,
yeah,
or similar stuff. But it's so hard to parse out because like the Abu Seda saga started with Alpha Troop when we first deployed, but then also it dovetails into the end of the deployment when
yeah,
you kind of miss this giant months in between.
yeah.
And so trying to
Uh,
place everything when and where gets, the timelines are
and it
wicked
gets so
twisted.
confusing. And, even when there was a big gap in between, we still end up going back on occasion and doing
Mm-hmm.
really important things or really hard things that actually had a big impact as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was all the other stuff that was going on with 573 with Charlie Troop and Bravo Troop,
Mm-hmm.
the Turkey 1 and Turkey 2s and all those things. And then we were right in the middle of it. And then we actually took lead in a lot of that. So, I mean, it's really kind of a unique thing that happened. It's the guy who wrote the book, but Peter Savakia, whatever, um, during our first, um, little get together barbecue, and it was there at Fort Bragg, and he was like talking to me, and I told him who I was, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I heard about you," and blah blah blah. And then he kind of was like, "Why did everyone from Alpha Troop here? And there's not a lot of guys from Charlie Troop or Bravo Troop. There were guys, but there was a lot of guys from Alpha Troop." And I was like, "Alpha Troop is your narrative, man. Alpha Troop really was um the where the the rubber met the road, and it was Alpha Troop doing a lot of the backbreaking work that um 573 is known for. It's not that Bravo Troop and Charlie Troop weren't doing their own thing and weren't doing really hard things, but it really was Alpha Troop making a lot of connections, especially in the very beginning, that paid off at the end of the deployment and handsomely. And it didn't just pay off handsomely for 573, it paid off for the military and what was going on throughout the entire Middle East. Um, and it's weird, now when I come across people who there's like two groups of veterans I bump into. There's a group of veterans who you bump into and you start telling them about what you did in 573. And then after about, 5 minutes into your story, they kind of look at you like, no, that never happened, man. You're making this shit up. And you're like, no, 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 I didn't. This really happened. And then here at the university, I'm not too far from the University of Michigan, and there are guys who served with us at U of M, and I didn't even know it. But there were two guys who ran the shadow system, the
Mhm.
flying lawnmower that flew over, and they were. I bump into them once in a while, and I never recognize these guys. But I'm walking through like Kroger, and all of a sudden they're like, Steve, and I'm like, who are you? And they're like, I'm the guy who was flying the shadow system. You're like, oh shit, yeah, man. And they live right around the corner from me, man.
Hmm.
So I mean, it's really kind of a weird thing, like when I bump into it, and they're both here, but they went into doing a lot more with technology, and they ended up here at U of M in the engineering department. So it's kind of cool.
Well, that'd be
So.
interesting to talk to too. Might have to
Yeah, I mean
put
they
some
were.
feelers out there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen them probably in about 2 years. I haven't bumped into one of
Hmm.
them, but yeah, they were both right here. Um, yeah, yeah, they were. It was really odd, but yeah, they were
Hmm.
talking about like how when they were at Warhorse and there was nothing for them to do because First Cav wasn't
Hmm.
using them at all. And then we showed up when you start penciling them in and everything. And then all of a sudden they're like, we went from running 0 missions in a week to running
Hmm.
6 to 7 per day because you guys were using us so much. But you think about it again, it's kind of how far ahead of the curve 573 really was compared to everyone else.
Yeah, it was interesting. So even being a part of it at the time, especially, we were very compartmentalized and being
Hmm.
separated from everyone else. I didn't fully understand things. In the time since, with a lot of research, I've read a lot of reports. I've read some DIRs and things like that. DIR, whatever. I don't even know what that stands for anymore. But um, and I've come to realize, no, you're absolutely right. And from my understanding of it, is one of the reasons was because Captain Few, Alpha Troop Commander, had deployments with Special Forces before.
Yeah.
So when he came in, he made an effort to reach out to the Special Forces groups that were on the ground, work with them, partner with Intel, start developing intelligence. Um, and that's why one of the reasons we ended up in Abu Saida right off the bat and then developed Patrol Base Otis. It was more just about getting on the ground. But that
Yeah.
happened months before the Surge Doctrine came out, before
Yep.
all the stuff, the Petraeus' coin manual, all the things that the Army would end up doing. Captain Few had us doing way before that because he was
Yeah.
trying to integrate lessons from Special Forces into conventional forces. And it was fascinating because, some of the areas around us, like Canaan, which is just a few miles outside of the Turkey area, the special forces had been going through Canaan in 2005 and finding all kinds of really interesting high value targets and intelligence they were developing out there. Out on the far eastern, I don't know exactly where it is. They ended up calling it Patrol Base Pirelli. And there was a special forces team out there of like 4 men that got ambushed, and I think half of them were killed.
Mm.
And that was, I think, 2005, early 2006. So there was a lot of stuff that was happening in that area, but it was very covert, very quiet, not talked about,
Right.
and that's what we stumbled into. But let's save that for a minute.
Yeah.
Why
Yeah,
don't
no, it again, you're back into that timeline going, where do we start? And I personally, and it's all right with you, I would like to start at the very, very beginning and
well,
just
why don't
talk.
why don't why don't we start first? Why don't we introduce you? So,
Oh, shit.
former Sergeant Stephen Pavlik.
Former Sergeant. Yes, I was former
Yeah.
Sergeant Stephen Pavlik. I was shit, how to say this correctly? I was, I think, the most disgruntled person in 573 cavalry. I mean, I was probably the most bitter. Definitely the most bitter person in 573. You were my only soldier.
Mhm.
Everyone asked me how many soldiers do you have, and I was like, one. What was
Well,
his name?
when you have a handful of soldiers and only one person, I don't, I just have to ask, Steve, why do you hate fat people?
Hey, actually,
Okay, no, no, anyway, no, so let's
so
just set the frame. So you came over to 573 originally. You had deployed before with Second Armored Cavalry
yes,
Regiment.
I deployed in 2003. Actually left in Halloween.
Hmm.
I arrived on Halloween in 2003 in BIOP. I was in Baghdad International Airport that day. And that was my first experience with being in Iraq. And then it was about 2 days later, I caught up with Second Cavalry, and we were based out of Camp Eagle, or War Eagle at the time, which is in the northeast corner of Baghdad. And that is also right on the edge of, at the time, Kamara. It was later renamed into Sadr City
Hmm.
by Atman Sadr. And I think I'm the only person you're probably going to interview that actually met Sadr. I didn't really like meet him. My lieutenant was having tea with them. I had a cup of tea as well, but I was standing off against the wall. Just, I was a specialist. I didn't know anything. I didn't know what was going on. But there was a guy named Sadr, and he basically they renamed the slums of Baghdad after him. And you know, he, you don't make notes of these guys when you're meeting them and anything like that. But I was there for second cav, and I came back just after the 4th of July in 2004. Um, I When I was in Iraq, my first deployment, we did a lot of work with 7th Special Forces Group, and I came down on orders to go to Korea. Second Cav was standing down. They were moving up to Fort Lewis. They were going to become this big striker unit. In Fort Polk, they were just drunks who drove around on Humvees with missiles on top. And when I was there, I ran through the range that was there quite a bit. They have a really complicated firing range, and I ran through that range quite a few times. But I didn't really feel like going to Korea. So one of the guys is like, well, if you think you're that tough, Pavlik, go ahead and try out for special forces. So I did. Um, so in January of 2005, my orders were delayed so I could attend Special Warfare College, and I was selected. I walked into selections. I weighed about 160 pounds. When I left selections, I weighed 130 pounds. I didn't have most of the skin on my feet. Um, but they were like, we really, really like you. And I'm like, I'm not a big guy. You know that I am just an average guy about all the way you can think of. And they're like, no, you don't quit. You just keep swinging no matter what. And I was like, you guys told me not to quit, so I didn't quit. And they were like, hey, you get to be part of us in special forces. So I came back. I went to airborne school. From airborne school, went to PLDC BNOC. And when I was in PLDC BNOC, I started meeting guys that I would later deploy with in 573, in particular Sabant. Sabant and I became really good friends when I was in PLDC BNOC. Matter of fact, we were on the same BNOC class. And then from BNOC, we went to the same team in SUT.
And
And
what does SUT mean for those
small
who have
units
no idea?
training. So if you think of
Okay.
Ranger School, you take Ranger School and put it on like uber steroids, you get SUT. And SUT is arguably the hardest school in the United States military. There is nothing close to it. So, in SUT, I end up going through SUT in the middle of the summer, and they won't even run it in the summer anymore. It's just too brutal of a school. They run it in the winter the same way with selections now. But while we were going through the school, me and Sabat just did not like SF land anymore. And both of us ended up getting boarded, even though Sabat was arguably the best medic they had ever seen. And they knew I was at this point one of the best machine gunners that they had come through that school in a very long time. So when Sabat and I left SUT, um, we changed the schoolhouse. We fundamentally, everything within the schoolhouse changed because of what Sabat and I did. They're like, listen, we have two winners and they're wanting to get out of here because how fucked up our school is. So our school is going to change. And it wasn't until November, must have been November 2005, maybe December 2005, when I finally caught up with 5-3. Actually, I came to you guys when you something like that. And I had to get my dad on. And,
Oh, sorry, one
um,
second. I'm having a low Wi-Fi moment, so I'll just step
uh-oh.
in and talk for a second while it catches up. Yeah, it was really common. The 82nd Airborne kind of acts as both a feeder organization going up and then as an organization coming down for uh, people that go up to special forces. They go to try out. If they don't make it,
Mhm.
or if they don't get selected, then they'll come back. And so there's a lot of exchange both ways between special forces and 82nd Airborne. Helps that the
Yeah.
SWIC and the 82nd are both at Fort Bragg, now Fort Liberty, so you end up with a lot of
Yeah.
personnel going between those units and standing up a new RISTA unit, which is, brigade level reconnaissance, which was coming out of being a division level reconnaissance unit, which is, fairly elite coming out of airborne reconnaissance. That's
Yeah.
where you send special forces candidates who are not being selected. So we ended up with a
Well,
lot of special forces candidates.
yeah, we ended up with a lot. And the three guys that were with me that came, there was me, there was Sabant, and there was Del Rocco. And the three
Mm-hmm.
of us came down to 573. And I know Sabant actually came down on orders to go, I think, to the 504th. And he went and asked to change to stay with me and Del Rocco. Because he was having, I mean, we were in the Broke Dicks, and
Mm-hmm.
with the three of us there, you have literally one of the most competent medics I have ever met. I mean, Sabat, I mean, he, special forces, when you're in SWIC and you're in SUT, almost every other day you go in front of a medic and they detail out what in the hell's the matter with you. You busted up your knee, you got hit in the head, you got blisters, whatever, heat exhaustion. It only took about 6 or 7 days, and Sabat was running all of that. The SF medics were like, "Listen, you know more than we do. That's you take care of this." And then they started going to them to Sabat with their problems. That's how good of a medic he was. Um, the other guy that was there was Nick Delarocco, and Delarocco was a unique cat too because he went to SF has SF selection, and I don't think this guy even had a scratch. He went all the way through selections, never got a scratch. Got done with SF selections, goes to Delta selections, blows through Delta selections like it's no one's business. I mean, he was that good at doing this stuff. He shows up at Delta, and the first thing they want is, hey, get your security clearance. Well, like 5 years before, he had declared bankruptcy because of a bar situation with like a sister-in-law or something. I don't know all the details other than there was a bankruptcy on his record, and that meant he was instantly disqualified from getting a security clearance. Couldn't get a security clearance. And Delta's like, can't use you, don't want you. You're out of here. And he had signed the Bear contract, taken like a $180,000 check, done like the 6 year enlistment, with the Bear contract, had SF, and then bought a house, sold his house up in Fort Drum, moved down to Aberdeen, which is on the far side of the training base, and that's where he was going to stay, and raise his family and stuff. And then Delta dropped him like a bad habit. They took back all the money and then said, "You're at needs of the Army. Too bad to be you." SF said, "We can't use you either because you can't get a security clearance." So he was in the broke dicks, even though there was nothing wrong with him. And I mean, this guy was depressed when I met him, really depressed. And then there was me, I was there and I was trying to ETS. Matter of fact, I was
Hmm.
trying to ETS while in SUT. I was like, I'm done with the Army. My 3 years are up. I'm not supposed to be here. I'm ready to go home. And they're like, what? You can't have, oh crap, you have no time left on your contract. You are done. And then they were like, you can't ETS from SWIC. Go down to the road to the 82nd and ETS. Everything will be fine. Don't worry about it. And there were the three of us. And me and Sabant, we got to go because both of us had security clearances. We passed our security clearance. We got to go play attaché for a little while. So we would travel around the country with like literally a briefcase on our wrist, practicing delivering classified orders. Saban got to do it more than I did because his security clearance got processed faster than mine did. But I still got to do it. And then we come back and we tease Nick, be like, "Hey, Nick, you want to go do one of these?" "Oh, you can't. You don't have a security clearance." And he would get so mad at us. I mean, it really was grinding into him in a bad way. And then when we got to 573, Nick went to the range. And I was like, holy shit, this guy
Hmm.
can shoot, man. Because it was like one of the ranges for some reason we were moving. And you were walking up and down the range. And at 100 yards, he had a shot group like that big. And I mean, I was happy I was hitting the target at 100 yards walking. And I mean, he was dead on. I was like, holy cow, this guy is that good. No wonder CAG wanted him so badly. And when we all went to, and you were on my truck with me, we were
Hmm.
in JRTC, we were sitting having a conversation
Hmm.
about how screwed over, SF had done me and Nick. And finally he asked me, he's like, he told me everything that happened. I'm like, did you do any training with Delta? No. Did you go to any schools with SF? I'm like, no. Then they violated your contract, man. You're out of here. The only thing you gotta do is go down to JAG and say, hey, this contract is voided. Everything's voided. You can go home when we get back. And he's like, no, that's not the case. When we got back to Fort Bragg from Fort Polk, he went down to JAG and that was the case. I mean, he was done.
Hmm.
And I know they were moving around some of the dates for stop loss, trying to hold on to Delarocco, but it was a mute point. I mean, his 8 year enlistment was up. He was done. Um, the ironic thing is the guy had nothing going on outside of the army. So if someone had sat down and just talked to him and had a beer and go, what happened? Hey, let's give you back the bear contract. He would have stayed. And man, he would have come in really handy on when we were in Zagania. That guy
Hmm.
knew what the hell he was doing. Um, and not only that, he was a really nice guy. But
Yeah.
um, no one wanted to sit down and talk to him. And I think that's one of the key things we need to talk about up front is how 573 came together. Because 573, they shut down Three Panther and put 573 up in its place. And I think there was some real bitterness towards
Hmm.
us when that happened. Like, you're shutting down the legendary Three Panther and you're putting this crappy cavalry unit in their place. I mean, the infantry guys were not happy. And before we got there, I mean, it was like a mass exodus. No one wanted to be part of 573.
Hmm.
And here shows up this light colonel. I think he had just got pinned light colonel, Pappas. And he's like, "Hey, I'm the guy in charge." And everyone's like, "Who in the fuck are you? This is going to be a disaster." And you know, ironic things started happening really fast. And one of the things that you got to know about Pappas is first, he's a great leader, but he's
Hmm.
also a phenomenal judge of character. I mean, a
Hmm.
really good judge of character. He's one of the people that can bump into you and go, I know how to use you and I know how to maximize you. And he was given a few things that most commanders are never, ever, ever, ever given. And one of the things he was able to do was pick his subordinates. He
Hmm.
picked the people that work for him. I mean, you think about it, even the most elite special forces units don't get to pick their soldiers. You're going to take command of this, and these are the guys you get to work with. And, when you look at Delta Force, they're all pretty much winners, so you don't mind.
Hmm.
When you're in regular army, man, you're like, dude, I got some winners, but I got some duds. Um, and in Pops's case, he had four winners underneath him in his chain of command. First guy he goes out and picks is Hendricks. Hendricks is awesome. Here's another guy who should be in Delta Force, except Delta Force tells him right once he gets done with selection, like, we don't have a place for you, man. So, I mean, he got booted out because they didn't have a slot for him. The next guy he goes and gets is Mike Few. Mike Few's coming out of JSOC, worked with Special Forces, but what you have is arguably the best, very best situational awareness and maneuver guy the Army has made in the last 30 to 40 years. I mean, there hasn't been anyone like him since Vietnam. And that's how good he is at understanding the situation and maneuvering troops and so forth. Then he picks Dobbs and he picks Carson. Again, two awesome guys. And he's got a winning crew at chain of command. I mean,
Oh yeah. Well,
and they're
Kinry,
just,
Sylvia, like you name it, if they had officer rank above the rank of I don't know, lieutenant, they're hot shots. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I think there's a handful of lieutenants that he had that he wouldn't have liked. And I think
Hmm.
looking back, hindsight's so clear. He picked a great starting lineup,
Hmm.
but he didn't have a bullpen. And if he had known what was coming, he probably would have reached out and picked another two or three officers who could have used command time, but weren't quite ready for command time. And it turns into a problem later on for him where he's got duds and he's got to put duds in charge of some of these units that they're not capable of handling and they're not capable of the situation. And he knows it, but he doesn't have options on it.
Well,
Uh,
and that's a good place to interject. So something that I've talked to people about and heard about, I don't know how true it is or not, but Rista was kind of an unpopular concept at the time in the army, especially at bigger ranks. And I've heard on some levels it was designed to fail or was intended to fail. Certain people wanted it to fail.
yeah,
So that's kind of between that concept. Yeah, he had a lot of leeway to pick his officer corps, but also he was given a lot of people that were just kind of thrown in. Like, what do we do with them? I don't know. I don't care. Get rid of them. At the
exactly.
bottom levels. Well, and then throw into that, we didn't know what the mission would be for Iraq.
Yeah,
We didn't know
yep.
until a couple of months before we deployed. They kept telling us we're going to Baji, we're taking over 101st territory, we're going to be in a desert guarding an
I
oil
don't think they
field in the
even
middle of
knew
nowhere.
right up to 2 weeks before we
Yeah.
deployed were what was exactly going to be
Mm-hmm.
573's mission because things were changing so quickly in
Mm-hmm.
Iraq. But to your point, yeah, Rista was not a popular concept within the Army. The problem that the Army had and why Rista was tried and in some cases failed miserably. And in 573's case, it was like an example of like, this is why we did it in the first place. Um, it you almost have to think of it as a miniature little army.
Mm-hmm.
And that Rista unit, when you have a miniature army like that, what it allows you to do is expand their area of operation. You can really stretch supply lines. You're like, if you think of a regular unit, a combat team that, hey, we have a Humvee problem. All right, we got to get mechanics here. We got to get parts here. We got to get the guys here to fix the machine. With us, those guys were embedded right with us. Hey, we're having problems with night vision system and ITAS and stuff like that. That guy was embedded with us. We have problems with our radios. There's a guy here who can literally fix your radio. We got him. And that when you have those people embedded with you, you really are given the ability to stretch. You don't have to look for a guy to fix a radio. He's here. He's like, hey, I just need this part, and you're good to go again. And then it was just a matter of pushing the part off the side of a helicopter flying by, and we're back on the road ready to go.
Yeah,
And
I it
that
became ironic. It became ironic to me because the way the army was looking at Rista was big army way and kind of big
Mhm.
army cavalry. The way
Yeah,
army kind of looks at cavalry is still traditional cavalry from like the medieval ages or the Roman era, right? But the way Rista worked was more like U.S. Army cavalry from like the Plains Wars, where
yeah,
you had
exactly,
outposts and they were self-contained entities that could do what they needed as a self-contained entity, develop the intelligence, move out with support assets like CAS or whatever.
yep,
But it really worked well in that kind of low intensity warfare where it's intel
exactly,
driven, decisions.
exactly. And the I don't know of the other ones that stood up before us. I knew there was a few, and I don't know about them because, man, Hurricane Katrina
Because you
was
don't
in
hear
there, and
about them.
I'm in the middle of North Carolina jungle,
Mm-hmm.
swamp doing patrol base with Sabat, So Sabat and I, we didn't see any of these practices setting up. We were busy in our training and our little world. And then when we got to 573, you guys had been to Katrina. It's the odd side of it. You guys had actually deployed to Katrina to help stabilize a city in the United States when Saban and I are actually in a foxhole, doing Vietnam patrol-based stuff out of this foxhole in North Carolina, at Camp McCall. So it was really kind of a unique thing. You know, we were talking about it, and you guys like, we were there, okay. You know, and then when you get to actual 573 standing up, what ends up happening is Appas gets to pick his chain of command. But then you're right, he gets the outliers and the unwanted that are lingering around the 82nd. He gets, and I kind of refer to us as the dirty dozen. And literally it is. It's the dirty dozen times 30. And if you think about that and do the math, that actually puts us right about 360 people, which is
Oh
exactly
yeah.
how many guys are spot
Mm-hmm.
on, whereas in our unit. And that was us, And then the weird thing is, I think Three Panther was almost 1,000 people. So if you think about the concept and the battle space we were taking up, you've got 1,000 guys who are now going to be replaced by 300. We're going to take probably a little bit bigger of a battle space and actually take on a much more complicated mission. And that right there was 573. And what was ironic was how good we got at it by the end. But when we were setting up, even we didn't even know what in the world was going to happen, other than Papa's got a massive chunk of money. Everyone was taking off and going to schools. It's like, hey, you want to go to this school? Yeah, I'd like to go to sniper school. Well, you barely can shoot. Yeah, you should go to sniper school. Why don't you go to sniper school? Hey, what school you want to go to? Oh, you, you look at units and they get like maybe 10 slots of sending people to ranger school. And I got a funny feeling we sent like 65 to 70 people
Mm-hmm.
to ranger school. And that's just the scale of the budget. And at the time, I thought Pappas was just spending money hand over fist. But what I realized is that he he was spending money hammer and fist, money that our unit didn't actually have, but he went and asked for forgiveness rather than permission, which is another sign of someone trying to be a good leader. And that's exactly what he did. And but you had the outliers. The problem that Pappas had was his senior NCOs, his first sergeants, um, were not very good. And this is again, you're getting the outliers and the scum that's been hanging around Fort Bragg. And you're like, well, we've got this guy. Who is he? I don't know, but he's a E8. We'll send him over to 573. He'll fit right in. There are already losers, and in some cases you get winners, in other cases you get losers. And I like, and I'm going to say this, and I know I'm going to get a few people upset, but
That's all right.
I
I'll
don't
edit
think.
it out.
Yeah, I know there's a few people who would not choose Edgar as our command sergeant major. And I think Edgar's on that list. Like, I don't know if I would choose me as our command sergeant major. There were times when Edgar was really good, and there were times when he had no business being there. And you know how I feel about McTheany. But I don't even to this day know who was the first sergeant with Bravo Troop when they deployed. I can't put a name to it. I can put a face to the guy who was Charlie Troop's
Oh yeah,
first sergeant.
Coomer
No, it
was
wasn't.
Charlie Troop, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, there was another guy. There was a guy before Coomer. This is exactly why. Yeah, remember there was a
Oh,
guy who
Leeworthy.
wandered
It
into
was
Iran.
Leeworthy.
Yeah, there was a guy that wandered into Iran with a platoon and almost got captured by the Iranians, and he was first sergeant for Charlie Troop, and
Hmm.
he was gone. And as soon as he was gone, Coomer took over, and Coomer was there the entire time. And Charlie Troop needed Coomer; they needed Coomer
Hmm.
badly, and he was awesome. And I mean, he really was Charlie Troop, heart and soul. And but like right now, I who was in charge of Bravo Troop, and I'm
Oh, it
going to
was
tell you,
Michael Clemens.
Cobb, huh?
Michael Clemens, and then Robert Cobb took over after.
Yeah, Cobb took over.
Yeah.
But the only one I really remember was Cobb. Cobb did everything. Cobb was Bravo Troop for so long, and if it wasn't Cobb, then it had to been Lilly.
Well, we
But
we might have.
they weren't the actual first sergeants. They couldn't get that first sergeant rank because they hadn't been to what command sergeant major school or something like that, and
Yeah.
that actually became a big problem
Hmm.
for 573 while we were doing all of our missions, largely due to the attrition rate and to the length
Hmm.
of deployment. It really turned into a problem for us that we had qualified people,
Hmm.
but Big Army would not allow us to advance them high enough or position them correctly to take on the roles that they were already filling. They just couldn't officially take on the role.
It was
Um,
a hard time for the Army in general.
yeah.
It was after the Abu Ghraib scandal came out.
Yep.
So Big Army was watching everyone at every level. Everything had to be approved from the Pentagon or White House on down.
Yeah.
You couldn't make a move without having layers of bureaucracy involved. And it just became such a problem to do anything because you had qualified people, you had good people making good decisions
Yep.
at a moment's notice, and you just couldn't, you had to wait and find
Yeah.
out.
And
Um,
then
I,
And then you had the one of the great problems with the Army, which is you had someone who was really qualified for the job, but there were two people above him who needed to
mhm,
have the job first and fail at it before you could put the person you really wanted to do the job in place. There's an old saying in the Army, if you wait around long enough, someone will promote you. And if you wait
mhm.
around a little bit longer, you'll get promoted into a position of authority where you can really get someone hurt. And that happened. And that was what was happening. And that wasn't just a 573 problem. That was
Mhm.
an Army-wide problem. And I know
So
the
it's
Army has
military wide.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the Army has tried to deal with the problem, and I don't actually think they have. I think, they've tried a few times where generals have gone, we'll restructure and we'll allow, high speed individuals to circumvent other people, and man, they go into the Pentagon with good intentions, but it
Mhm.
it never comes out of the Pentagon with any practical implications.
Well,
So yeah,
I think
that's
this is a good spot to kind of jump into the deployment because we've laid the
yeah.
groundwork, and I lost the thought about why that's a good place to jump in.
No,
But
no, it is.
well,
Well, it is. I was thinking the same thing.
it's kind of
S-
because we jumped in so segregated. We got the orders to deploy. We
yep,
get to Kuwait,
yep,
and Bravo and Charlie troops. and I'm forgetting exactly. I think Delta Company went with Barlow and Charlie troops,
Yep.
but they get the orders to go to Fob Caldwell, and they're going
Yep.
to start working the Balad Ruse area and up to Muktadia and the border.
All
Alpha
right.
Troop gets orders, and it keeps slipping my mind. It was fourth ID. Was it
Yep.
468, 469? It was
I
the Silver Lions Brigade, and I forget the numbers, but it was fourth ID, and we were
fourth
to
entity.
fill in while they were getting ready to rip toe with First Cav. So it was only
So
supposed to be a period of months.
so what ends up happening is we get orders to deploy, and there is a debate between Second Two Panther and 573. One of these units has to support special forces throughout Iraq, and the other unit is going to do interdiction of arms between Al Qaeda and Iran. And they were arguing back and forth who's going to take this over. And you also have to keep in mind at this time, the overall chain of command within Iraq is changing. And at this point, a guy named Petraeus is coming in. And they had just identified him as coming in. And
Oh, one sec. I
yeah,
guess most people that would watch this probably know the timeline, but 2005, the
mhm,
first Iraqi elections happen.
yeah,
All the Sunnis protest, and the Sunni
yeah,
protest goes horribly. So the Iraqi government fills up with Shia
yep,
factions, which are linked to Al Sadr, who you're talking about earlier.
yeah.
That's when the ethnic cleansing and sectarian civil war starts. So before Petraeus is coming in, and Iraq is becoming really unpopular, devolving into civil war, and right in the
Right.
middle is when we get plunked in. So,
So, and to go back a little bit further than that, let's just break down the demographics. First off, you have a handful of major cities within Baghdad. The largest city, I mean, the Baghdad within Iraq. Baghdad is by far is the largest city. It has over half the nation's population wrapped up in it. It is a big metropolitan city. Most of the city is very similar to driving around Houston. It's actually a fairly modern city. That's the exception being the center of the city, which is the old city, and the slums of the city, Sadr City up on the northeast corner. These parts are very much like out of the movies where you have mud huts, especially the center of the city. I mean, there are buildings there that are older than Christ. I mean, this is an old city that, this is the place where the Mongols hit. This is the place that, Babylon really was there. Um, and then you have other major cities down in the south. You have Basra. Up in the north, you have Mosul. And then you have Balad, which is a big military base just north of um, of Baghdad. And those are your major cities. You also have two major rivers, the Tigris and Euphrates. And that is one of the great uh, resources of Iraq is that they have a tremendous amount of fresh water. Um, about 80% of the Middle East's fresh water flows through Iraq in one way or another. So it's great for irrigation. It's great well, it used to be great for crops. The problem that the water has is that it rolls over a limestone basin. And as it passes over a limestone basin, it picks up a very minute amount of salt, and it's still fresh water. You and I can walk up, drink it. Cows can drink it. Anyone can drink it. It's fresh water. Even though it's brown, it reminds you of the Mississippi River down in Louisiana. Um, the problem it has is if you go and irrigate crops with it, it's fine for the first few hundred years. You do it for 4,000 years, like they've been doing in Iraq, and what you end up doing is slowly salting the land so no
mm-hmm.
crops grow. So there's a lot of fresh water. It shouldn't be used for irrigation like you think it should be, but it's still Iraq's number one resource is fresh water. Their major uh, revenue is oil. And that comes out of an oil field up in the very northern part of Iraq by Mosul, and there's another major oil field and oil refinery down in Basra. and oil tankers are constantly going in and out of Basra full of oil, and that's their major revenues. The other major revenue is farming. And we did a lot of combat missions in some serious
Mhm.
farmlands, in particular Turkey 1 and Turkey 2. And those are Iraq's main things. Now, demographically, most of the country is Shiite. And then you have Sunni and Saddam Hussein, who was the ruler of Iraq. There was a prince that was backed by the United States. The prince was killed by Saddam. Um, and then Saddam took over in the early 70s and basically was in control until we supplanted him in 2003. And Saddam was not a good guy, but he actually had an iron grip on that country, and everyone followed his orders to the letter. And when we supplanted him, the Shiites, the the majority of the country, was like, we're not going back to Sunni rule.
Mhm.
Okay, great. Well, then you guys start running the country. Well, we don't know how to. And in their fairness, most Shiites didn't or don't have a lot of education. If you go to a doctor, he's a Sunni. You go to a banker, they're Sunnis. You go to people who know how to run a country, they are Sunnis. Saddam was sending loyal Sunnis off to school around the world. They would come back and help him run his country. And that made up the Ba'ath Party. The
Well,
guys who,
to
yeah,
overlay onto that, to make it more complex,
yep,
part of the ethnic sectarian issue there was in the 80s when the Iran-Iraq war started over the oil and the borders between Iran and Iraq. Iran is
mhm,
predominantly a Shiite country.
yes,
So part of the suppression of the Shiites was because Saddam was worried about them growing too much power and aligning with Iran and then, you know,
yeah,
overthrowing them. And that
yeah,
the echoes of that are still echoing to this day.
yeah. And there's a level of distrust between
Mhm.
the Iraqis and Iranis, even to this day. And that's Sunni not trusting Sunni. And this is, Shiite not trusting Shiite. The Iran war left some really vicious scars and some real bitterness in within that part of the world. And then we drop in the middle of it as if we're going to be the great saviors. It
Yeah,
didn't
we're
go
bringing
away.
democracy to a country that has never known it, never
Yeah.
wanted it. No.
Yeah, it's just not the best scenario. But with that said, too, in 2003, when we actually invaded, or 2004, when we invaded Iraq, we didn't actually have a game plan on what we were going to do once we conquered the country. It
Mhm.
took us, what, 3, 4 weeks? We had the entire country basically, the army beat senseless, and we had control of the country. And then everyone's looking around in the Pentagon, like, in the White House, like, now what? Oh, I guess we're going to have to build the country. And, there was no planning involved. So, we got ready in what, December 2005. We start coming down. Hey, you guys are going to be deploying. And, Pappas is in charge of 573. We were the first Rista unit to really stand up um, in Fort Bragg. I know did they stand up three Rista units in Fort Bragg? And there was
Yeah, they ended
173
up
and then
doing
three
yeah,
seven
one
three
per
stood.
brigade.
Yeah,
Then I think there was a fourth brigade eventually, 508 I think came out. But
yeah. And we were the first ones. And we set the bar by which everyone else was going to get measured to. And Papa Scott basically the leftovers of Fort Bragg, and he got some. When you get the outliers, you can get real winners in there, and that happened. And some of these guys were awesome. Some of the guys who come out of 573 are just, I mean, really, really good guys, and they trusted each other. And that was really like the thing about 573 is like the Dirty Dozen, you get them together, you train them up really fast, and then you drop them in um a, a meat grinder, and say either you're going to get really good or you're going to die, but you're going to get it right, or that's it. And we got it right. And I remember when we got to Kuwait, Um, I God, Bates had to have told Gonzalez because I ended up going to. I wasn't supposed to go to hardly any intelligence briefings, but then all of a sudden I found out I was going to a whole bunch of them, and largely due to I think Bates told Gonzalez, he's like, "Are you going to these intelligence briefings that we're supposed to go to?" And Bates is like, "No, I'm just sending Kinsler." Well, fucking A. Well, why in the hell? Who can I? Oh shit, Pav's got a secure clearance. Pavlik, you get over there to those intelligence briefings. So just before we went up to Bakuba, a guy named Zakawi got killed just south of Bakuba, and he was killed by JSOC. And I remember we ended up there was like a serious debate whether or not Zakawi should actually be killed or not. Zakawi is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the way they explained Zakawi to me was here is a very charismatic man who is dumber than a box of rocks. Um, and there's another old saying, the best player on our team is the other team's quarterback, and that's Zakawi. So there was like a serious debate whether or not we actually kill Zakawi. The catch of all with this guy is how brutal he is. And this guy is literally torturing people to death every single day. He is just murdering people all over the place. He is violent, violent, violent. And he's a really bad guy. With that said, he can't actually fill out a check. And
Mm-hmm.
this guy doesn't know how to spell. He can't read and write. He has no idea what he's doing. He's blowing through money so fast that Al Qaeda is bankrupt because of what he's doing. Um, and he's alienating a whole bunch of people around that they need, Al Qaeda needs desperately. He's alienating them around all of Iraq.
Well, he
Um,
was a big reason why a lot of foreign fighters came in and started. I don't know.
yeah. So
I
the
don't know
other
if it was
side of it is
jihad or not, but
right. The other
yeah.
side of it is he's extremely charismatic. If you came and told me a joke and I go, ha ha ha, that's funny. Yeah, that's a great joke. Zakawi could walk in right behind you, not know that you told me the joke, tell me the exact same joke again. I'd fall out of my chair laughing so hard.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of charisma this guy had. Um, but if he was smart enough, he would have been a great leader, but he wasn't. The other leader they had was Rockman, and Rockman was a Canadian. And I mean, I think I had a photo of him wearing a Toronto Maple Leaf shirt. That's
Hmm.
I if I didn't have the photo, I photoshopped it together to remind me that he was the Canadian. But he should have been running a Fortune 500 company here in North America. Spoke perfect English. I mean, he fit right in with us here in the United States, no problem. He'd been to the United States multiple times. But he became radicalized and he went to the extreme, extreme end of Islam and ended up marrying a girl from the village of Turkey. And when that's Turki, and which is just north of Al Qut and just south of where we were at in Bakuba. So that's where he was. And these two guys do not like each other. Zakawi and Rockman do not like each other at all. Rockman has a personality of a brick. Zakawi is incredibly charismatic. Rockman knows how to wage a war and run Al Qaeda, and everyone knows it. And then on the other side, Zakawi is in charge and has no idea what he's doing other than being
Mm-hmm.
brutal. And the two,
Rockman he's fascinating.
yeah.
I've been doing digging on him for these videos, especially talking with Kinzer.
Hmm.
The thing is, I can't find information about him. I find a lot. It's all contradictory. Even
Mm.
DIRs are all contradictory. No
Hmm.
one knows. He is either alive and well to this day. He's either dead in
No,
2005.
he's dead. He's dead.
No one still knows to this day. And in unclassified documents I can find, there are no pictures of him. He's definitely Canadian. Yeah, what you said,
No,
that all
he's
matches.
yeah, no,
But
he's dead, and I think
well,
he died in 2011, 2012 in Yemen.
Yeah, and compared to Zarqawi, where he left a paper trail, you knew everything about him.
Yeah.
Then there's Rockman, who's this ghost who, in certain circles, in intelligence circles, he comes up as a ghost. He's like
Hmm.
a myth that he's almost
Yeah.
a boogeyman's name for these 20 years of the
Yeah.
global war on terror, where keeps coming up, and you don't know if that's actually him or not. And it's kind of a fascinating little niche thing, where it's
Yeah.
like, oh, we're chasing ghosts in the Iraqi desert. It's
No,
weird.
well, in Turkey 1, yeah, actually, I think
Mm-hmm.
that's exactly what was happening. But yeah, in once we finished up with our deployment, Rockman knew the writing on the wall was done,
Mm-hmm.
and the door to Iraq into the Middle East was pretty much closing. And he went down to Yemen. He focused Al Qaeda's attention more on Afghanistan and
Mm-hmm.
Africa. And then I think he was killed by an airstrike as well in Yemen, and that was the end of him. The what you might be reading about is the long-term implications that this guy had because he was that smart. I mean, he really, really knew how to not just run Al Qaeda, but run a business. I mean, this guy was a businessman first. He had a
Yes.
master's degree in business from like
Yes.
the Harvard of Canada.
Well,
Um,
he his group. So he started off, I guess we'll talk about the turkey cult now. So he started off the turkey cult in like the 90s, early 90s, 92,
mhm,
93. That's about when he met his wife. And they started radicalizing her brothers out there and
yeah.
cousins. And like the fucking turkey village, I don't know, population 5 to 10,000 people.
Mm,
Like there's three villages that are all within several miles of each other. Maybe
mhm,
total population of everything is 20 to 30,000 at most, just
yeah.
because not a lot of buildings, but they're high density places. But you're talking literal middle of nowhere,
Yep.
desert close to the Iranian border. All they do is farm. They farmed for 10,000 years. Like the
Yep.
canals they're using are literally 10,000 years old. I've traced
Yep.
the history back to Cyrus the Great invasion,
Oh yeah.
and that's all they're doing out there. So he radicalizes them throughout the 90s. And then, like around 96 to 98, they start trying to assassinate people in Balad Ruse. And Saddam's government hears about it, and they don't like it because they're starting this anti-Saddam cult. And they
Hmm.
try to kill Uday Hussein and like take off one of his testicles
Hmm.
somehow. And Saddam's like, this isn't cool. Sends his enforcers to go round him up, and they do. And usually, you would think under Saddam that's a death sentence, but no, they throw him in jail, make them promise to just tone it down, and then let him
Hmm.
go. Not once, three times that we know of.
Yeah.
Three times, Rockman talked them out of Saddam's executions
Yeah.
somehow. It's like, what is going on with this guy?
Well, it's money. It's money.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
there is a big pipeline of money from Saudi Arabia up into Iraq, and it ends in the village of Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
And that radicalism, just like here, where you see a mega church getting built, and you're like, where in the hell are they getting the funding for that? It's the same
Mm-hmm.
true with what's going on there. And there's super money down in Saudi Arabia, and they're funneling it up into Iraq, and it's landing in the lap of a guy named
Mm-hmm.
Rockman. And he knows how to spend money and get the most for every single dollar. And then when we show up, we're like, hey, who's keeping Rockman in check? It's Zakawi, because Zakawi just blows through
Mm-hmm.
money like there's no one's business. Zakawi doesn't know what he's doing, other than he chains a whole bunch of people together and sets them on fire, and he kills kids in front of their parents, and
Mm-hmm.
on and on and on. Um, and then we show up, and fourth ID is kind of walking around with his chest punched out a little bit, like,
Mm-hmm.
we just killed Rockman. Well, it really wasn't
Mm-hmm.
them, but you know what? I still give them credit for taking a victory lap, because it was their AO. They did flush them out. I've seen a few things online where the special forces were taking credit for it, but I don't actually think special forces was really that involved. I actually think it was just Fourth ID doing some good work south of Bakuba, and they realized not Rockman, but Zakawi was there, and Zakawi took off, and the Predator Joan had him, and about a mile south of town, they popped him pretty good and killed him. And that was the end of Zakawi. And at that point, Rockman is in full control,
Hmm.
and we show up. And I think what ended up happening is Fourth ID asked for one of our troops to stay there and help.
Hmm.
They were concerned that Zakawi is getting killed, that there were going to be repercussions within the area. And they weren't sure exactly what was going to happen. And they were kind of gave, um, Pappas took Delta, Bravo, and Charlie and went to Caldwell and started doing the mission that we were supposed to all do, which is weapons interdiction along the Iranian border. And this is supporting the little castles. And for anyone who doesn't know, the Iran-Iraq border is not a straight line. It is not even, it is not clean. It is a jagged knife's edge of like saw teeth. And both sides have little outposts about every 10 to 15 miles. We call them castles. They look like a little castle. And they sit there and pull guard and literally glare at each other. And if the opportunity gets it, they will take a shot at each other, even to this day. And we were supposed to stop weapons from traveling across there. And this is where Charlie Troop got themselves in trouble because they were out on patrol and they didn't even realize they had wandered into Iran and they
I will
bumped.
say they possibly, from the reports that I've looked at, they possibly didn't actually. The Iranians probably crossed over illegally, but and not. It's neither here nor there. It's kind of a gray area, but it doesn't look
Yeah.
like they actually did cross.
But then what they were saying down having tea with the Iranians, and then all of a sudden they realize the Iranians are surrounding them with tanks and everything, and they are like, "Hey, we got to go," and they take off, and they get in a little bit of shootout with Iran. And by the time the first sergeant from Charlie Troop got back to Caldwell, he wasn't first sergeant anymore. He was gone, and we never saw or heard from him again. And honestly, no one missed him. No, he hit the road, and I don't think anyone cared that he was gone. And but this is what you got when you were getting, the Dirty Dozen is you get some winners and you get some losers, and we ended up picking up a handful of losers, and the losers were at the top of the chain of command. Your lower mid-grade NCOs and officers were awesome, but the very top guys were not the best. And then then there was Alpha Troop, and Mike Few really started to show some of his brilliance, and he was smart. And put in context, Dobbs and Carson looked like the premier commanders, and here are these guys. They're handsome, they're tall, they, can PT and on and on and on. And then here comes Mike Few. Mike Few is a big guy, but he looks goofy. He's got a little bit of a belly. He's always got little dip and long line. He just odd looking dude, but he is smart. He's coming out of JSOC. He knows what's going on, and he kind of is. And he's a big history buff. And he said, "Hey, you know what? We were making mistakes in Vietnam, and we're going to repeat those mistakes here." And one of the things that they were doing in Vietnam is they would go out during the day, go on patrol, and then at night go back to their base and drink beer and wait until the next day.
Mhm.
And then at night, the Viet Cong would show up and do whatever they wanted to do. And then in the morning, they would wander back into the jungle and out come the U.S. again. Mike Few's like, we're not going to do that. We're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to go and live with the locals. And Fourth ID is like, well, we're having some trouble way to the north of us a little bit in this city called Abeceda. There's about three or four little villages along the way, Medisa, Zagania, on up, but Abeceda is having trouble, and we don't really know what's going on up there because Fourth ID was kind of taking the picture of, we go out on patrol and we come back. We go out on patrol and we come back. We don't deviate from that. Few goes up there and he kind of identifies the problem, which is a sectarian violence. You have Sunni killing Shiite and Shiite killing Sunni, And Abiseta is this town that's on the northern part of their operating area, their AO, and it's controlled by a sheik. Satani? No, what I?
Hassani.
Yeah, that's it. And
Yeah,
he's
he's the Shiite sheik.
you're right.
Yeah.
And most of Abiseta is Shiite. And we called it Big Abiseta and Little Abiseta, and Little Abiseta was Sunni. And the villages between Warhorse and Little Abiseta were all Sunni as well. Um, the Shiites were up in the north in Big Abiseta. And Big Abiseta has kind of like a big highway on the very edge of it on the north side. And then it's got a road coming down that will wander through all the villages and eventually take you down to Warhorse. And as you wander down through these little villages, you end up in a kind of almost like a jungle atmosphere. You are no
Mhm.
longer in open desert. This is very green, very lush land. There's palm groves everywhere, very thick growths of bushes and swamps. And there are river basins. There are little outshoots of water going everywhere. And it is not only is it incredibly hot, it is incredibly humid when you get into this area. So it's a very different atmosphere than what most people think of when they're out in that you're in Iraq. You know, you're thinking wide open desert with sand, and then you see pictures of us, and man, it is green, green, green. It's almost more akin to jungle warfare than it is to desert warfare. And Few goes, well, we have a sectarian bias. What he does is he plants the 82nd flag right in between these two sectarian groups. On one side is Little Abaseda with some Sunnis, and on the other side is the Shiites. And we start trying to make and build bridges with both sides. What we don't realize is the Sunnis want nothing to do with us. I mean, really, they just don't care to talk to us, don't care. We didn't realize at the time that they were all primarily hardcore Al Qaeda. It was Fourth ID had no idea. We really didn't
Mhm.
have much of an idea. And then on the Shiite side, they don't really want anything to do with this either. And the sheik up there, Asani, he had lost a few sons to Fourth ID. Fourth ID had killed them. He had a few more that were fucked up from Fourth ID. This is Apaches. This is raids being done. Fourth ID really wasn't paying attention to the Sunni Shiite situation going on up there. So we show up and we're trying to, talk to the sheik, and the sheik wants nothing to do with us. I mean, he's just like, fuck you. You guys killed, I think we killed one of his favorite sons, is what Fourth ID ended up doing. And it took us 2 to 3 months of really going and talking to him and meeting with them and playing nice before he'd even really start talking to us and starting to trust us. And but once we planted our flag, the other key thing that's going on up there is Little Abiseta is primarily deserted. There's not a whole lot of people in Little Abiseta. The Sunni population has been reasonably decimated by gunfight between Big Abiseta and Little Abiseta. What was going on is people from Medisa and Zagania and other places were rolling up there, and they would get into a gunfight with the that sheik as well, and they were winning. The sheik was actually losing up there in Abisera. And it's the one thing that we bought him when we got up there. Everyone's like, "Hey, you're bringing him weapons and you're bringing him bullets and you're supporting him too much." What we ended up buying him was time.
Mhm.
All right. He had a lot of money and he had a lot of support from Iran. What he didn't have was time to get everything together because the people from Zagania and Medisa and all these other places were constantly there are these like little gunfights with like 10 guys and 7 guys on one side, 10 guys on the other side, and they get into a gunfight. And this is what his sons were doing. And he had a lot of sons. Josh probably knows exactly how many. But I think he had like 7 or 8 sons. And then he had probably another 40 to 50 decent soldiers that worked for him as cops during the day and soldiers at night, and they would go and get in gunfights. And we had them getting into gunfights. What we didn't realize is that Al Qaeda was really turning Zagania, one of the villages, into a training camp. And was, during the day they would practice combat drills, and at night they would go and deploy them on the guys from Abeceda and get better and better at doing it. And as they trained, they really started giving the Sheik all he could handle. And when we planted our 82nd flag um between them, it bought him a big breath of air. And now all of a sudden he could bring in more guys, he could bring in more guns. He was uh, spending his money wisely. He was trying to get assets in place so that way when we left, he would be in a good spot to fight him off. And that's exactly what he did. And once he realized that we were buying him time, then well, these guys from the 82nd aren't that bad. And of course, we've got Josh who can speak Arabic. So
Mm-hmm.
Josh is going up there all the time talking to them. He's seeing them all the time. Mike Few's going up there probably every other day, seeing them. And it's not like we're driving from Moorhorse up there to see him, which is a 45-minute drive to an hour drive. It's a 5-minute drive because we
Mm-hmm.
made a camp right there and we held down that little camp. And that right there um, really changed and set the tone for 573 and how
Yeah,
573 was going to do
I'll throw up a map
operations.
up here. That was Patrol Base Otis, is what we ended up calling it, and it was a little house that we rented
Yeah.
from a guy, and then ended up fortifying. And it was
Rented
literally in the
is
middle.
a
I mean,
subjective term. We showed
well,
up and
we
we said,
we
we're
gave
taking
him
over your
we gave him
house.
money for it. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
he
we're
had moved
taking over
out.
your house. And we're like, well, I ain't
Yeah,
moving. And he's like, and Mike View's like, here's $10,000. Get the
yeah.
fuck out.
But
And
it was
you've
it
got
was right
about
in
20
between.
minutes, man. We're
Yeah, it
going to
was
be
right in
back
that
tomorrow.
between that depopulated zone between the
Yep.
two big Abuseda and little Abuseda, where
And
they've been
obviously
having
it
all
is
the
divided by a
gunfights.
shit creek. That was the other thing. There
Yeah.
was a shit creek that literally divided the two. Um,
Well, and when you look at the map, and I'll throw it up here because I've
yep.
been doing a lot of maps to help
Yeah, I know.
just
I saw.
place it. But you'll have like Abu Seda is here,
Yeah, I
wherever
know.
Abu Seda is here, and then over here is Makisa, and then Zagani, and there's like a triangle that you see is all the Sunni towns. And what we didn't know at this time, and wouldn't know until way later, was Mukisa had been a covert kind of regional capital for Al Qaeda, where they had their
Yeah.
courts, they had a bunch of other like Sharia kind of stuff, they
Yep.
had torture rooms, and it was all buried in these bunkers out in the woods that no one
Yep.
knew was there. So there's this massive Al Qaeda presence, weapons coming from Iran across the
Oh yeah.
border, fighters going to Bakuba, and we're sitting in the middle of it with no idea yet. It
Right.
was,
And you got to keep in mind too, Iran is selling weapons to everyone. It's
yes,
not
to
like
both
they
sides.
were picking a side, all right?
Mm-hmm.
They were selling weapons to the Al Qaeda, they were selling weapons to the Sheikh, they were selling weapons to the Wahhabi guys down the road. They were selling weapons to some tribes up to the north that were causing problems. Anyone who wanted to buy weapons. And if Iran didn't have the weapons, they would go out and broker for the weapons for you to have them. So they were doing deals with China, they were doing deals with Russia, they were doing deals with Kazakhstan and Georgia and some of the other countries, just bringing in as much weapons as they could have. Because anytime they could cause problems for the United States, that was good business for Iran.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the I know I was seeing Josh's video where he's talking about the Iranian blue eye guy, and I don't
Mm-hmm.
remember bumping into him or seeing him. I remember them talking about him, but the sheik that we were dealing with was important to Iran's long-term plans. They didn't want him to die, and us planting a flag there was actually kind of a okay with Iran. They were like, "Hey, we like this idea. You guys doing that." I think if it wasn't on Iran's plan, I think we would have gotten a hard lesson on get the fuck out, and some of us would have
So
got killed there. But
one
it did.
one of the things that I have long time considered was Iran was known for the EFPs, the explosively formed penetrators, which
Right.
destroyed armor, just absolutely devastated
Yep.
it. And the one thing that we ran into a lot of was suicide bombs, which were a hallmark of the Sunni and Wahhabist
Yep.
extremists. We barely ever in our AO ran into the explosive form penetrators. Iran easily could have thrown a bunch of those at Hassani to get rid of us had they wanted.
Yeah.
which always made me consider that, yeah, Iran probably was holding off direct attacks against us. We
Yeah,
as far as I know, we didn't have a lot of troubles with Shiite militias.
right.
Uh-oh, I'm
We,
getting some Wi-Fi stutter again.
and now did we not have it? It, things big deal.
Hey, Steve, one
Uh-oh.
sec. I'm getting some Wi-Fi
Connection
stutter.
is on. There you are. You're back.
Oh, okay.
All
Yeah.
right.
Sorry. What was that again, real quick? Right after I stopped with the Iran piece.
Uh-oh. Yeah. What ends up happening is things get quiet. They got really quiet there around Bakuba.
Mm-hmm.
It was, from what I understand, Al Qaeda's decision to not fight anywhere near Bakuba. And at this point, now Petraeus is in charge of Iraq. And he does something. Fourth ID is transitioning out, and First Cav is coming in, and he brings all of First Cav. He brings all of Big Army with him, and his thinking is, I'm going to put so many guys in Baghdad. No one's because at this time Baghdad's the hub of everything, and it is still today the hub of that whole area. And Petraeus put so many guys around Baghdad that Al Qaeda can't move. They can't do anything in Baghdad. So Rockman makes a decision. Well, what can we do? Where should we go? And he decides Bakuba is going to be their base of operations in Ramadi. And the Ramadi people turn on Al Qaeda. This is where the Ramadi Council comes in. And the Ramadi Council really gets and upends Brockman's plans. And a lot of the problem that Rockman has is he's dealing with the legacy of Zakawi. Zakawi was that brutal. And he had killed that many people in Ramadi that the Ramadi people are like, listen, we don't want you no more. And they turn on Al Qaeda and start killing Al Qaeda. They don't really like us in the United
Mm-hmm.
States, but we support them. If they're going to fight Al Qaeda too, then we're going to support them. And with a little bit of U.S. support, the Ramadi Council really give a beating to Al Qaeda and chase out of Ramadi. And that leaves Bakuba and Bakuba alone to hold where Al Qaeda is going to operate. There's other places, but it's really Bakuba. And First Cav comes in and they look around Bakuba, and Bakuba is like the picture of calm, quiet, peaceful area. So they take their most incompetent unit, which I
Mm-hmm.
think is First Squadron um, of their
112 cavalry.
yep, 112 Cavalry,
Yeah.
and they plant them in Bakuba, and then they look around and it's so quiet, we don't need you
Mm-hmm.
guys anymore. You can leave. So at this point, we pack up and we go to Kabul. And this is
Well,
really
let
the
me
end of our first deployment.
let me step in 1 second right here because there's a couple things that happen all at once that I
Right.
think are interesting. So right as we're transitioning out that October, we'd been working in Abu Saida, but we'd also been working down in Zagania, been working really close with the
Oh,
Iraqi police
you're
there.
breaking up again, buddy.
No, no.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. There you go. You're back. Okay.
Okay. So
The
we've
Iraqi
been working,
police.
yeah, we're working with the Iraqi police out of Zagania, which I don't believe were actually connected to
Right.
Hassani. They were actually more legitimate police, if I remember.
Yeah.
But we had been working to root out Al Qaeda in Zagania, and again, not fully understanding just how big the picture was there or how deep they
Right.
were. So we start all these raids. We're working on these raids. October hits. Things have really spun up for us. The advance party for First Cav is coming into Warhorse. Fourth ID is
Hmm.
leaving. We're in the middle of all these things going on with the patrol base. Sheikh Hassani, Sheikh Adnan, who was out in the other reaches doing the Zagania operations. We're putting together this raid for October 31st, Halloween, which we call Shakumaku, which in
Right.
Iraqi dialect means, hey, what's up? Which I was kind of laughed at.
Yeah.
Um, but October 26th, I remember this date specifically because I have pictures of it. We're
Hmm.
doing QRF missions in between all the other stuff we're doing. So we're doing Quick Reaction Force, ATAFOB, Warhorse,
Hmm.
and we start getting reports that Iraqi police and army units all across Bakuba are getting hit in a wave coming from south and west, moving towards the river. And so we go out and we go point to point to point, and everywhere that we show up, they're being actively engaged or have been slaughtered. And I remember pickup trucks full of bodies streaming blood coming out
Yep.
the back, and every single Iraqi policeman or soldier had been slaughtered or was in the process of retreating with the bodies.
Yep.
And that was October 26th. It was the day that Bakuba fell to Al Qaeda. And I don't hear that ever brought up a lot. And the reason was because there was almost no one else in Bakuba at the time. And there was no reporters or media in Bakuba. We were like some of the only American units at the time. So yeah, Bakuba fell on
You're
October
you're
26,
you're breaking up. You got to
2006. We'll let it catch
all
up
right.
for a second. I don't know if it's mine or if it's yours. So
I
not,
don't know either. It could be both. Comcast tells me that their stuff is perfect. It never
oh,
screws up. And then it
yeah.
it screws up and they go, wasn't us. It must have been a glitch somewhere else. Be like,
I'm hoping
but
that
yeah,
because
you're
it records on my end, so I hope my stuff will come in clear at least. I don't want yours to get walked on, but so anyway, after Bakuba falls on the 26th, 27th,
right.
about then, we go on, we do the raid, Shakumaku. That goes
Right.
off. We take out its major safe house and
Yep.
kill a bunch of Al Qaeda in Zagania.
Right.
Um,
So
and
in Shakamaku, we caught a whole bunch of Syrians. These guys had come from
mm,
afar to kill Americans, and they made everyone very uncomfortable. Even the Al Qaeda locals were not happy with these guys coming in from Syria because they were extreme, extreme. They were all coming there to die, and they brought their families with
mhm,
them to die. And when we were there, we did this huge raid. We had guys on one side of the river. As we approached, the gunfight started breaking out. These guys ran across the river. First Cav was already in charge, and then First Cav just quit like halfway through the raid. Like everything was ready to go, and then First Cav's like, "No, we're not doing it," and just
yeah.
kind of sat on their
So
hands.
Captain Few had planned it out meticulously with his
Yeah,
officers. Was it Josh Clopton was the fires officer for that mission? I believe. I maybe it wasn't Clopton. I don't know, but anyway, our fires officers had planned out
yeah,
area denial artillery strikes for the
yep,
palm grove right behind the safe house to keep them all inside, so that way we could either pin them, capture them, or kill them all,
right,
prevent them from getting away because that's the mo. That's what had been
right.
happening. We had planned to pick up Iraqi army units with us at the Al Bara Iraqi army station, and we were going to do 2 columns of raid. We had a sniper hide across the river to take out
Yep.
sentries and things ahead of time. It was planned. It was going to be beautiful raid. It was going to be beautiful, the very best of raids. I can't do a Trump, but um, and somewhere down the line. So anyway, the raid
Well,
starts to go off, and there's no artillery.
yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
it was really on to First Cav. We had all
Yes.
pre-designated coordinates. Everything was supposed to
Mm-hmm.
go off. We were going to do this huge, like, just blast the hell out of this palm grove. We were going to chase them into it. It was going to light them up.
Do you know why there was no artillery?
First Cav didn't do it.
The first cav artillery officer looked at the plan and said, "Well, we didn't feel you actually needed the artillery." So even though a
Well,
unit had requested pre-planned fires for a raid mission,
yeah,
someone just
the First
canceled it
Cav
and didn't
just,
tell us. And
yeah,
the only
it's
reason,
exactly it. They just said, and it was really just two guys going, we're not doing this mission. And then they all went to lunch.
yes,
And we were out. And what ended up happening is we ended up having like the camera crew came with us and they were
yes,
there. And what ended up happening is there were happened to be in a group of Apaches that were there.
mm-hmm.
And the Apaches stepped up and just blew the hell out of the palm groves because they had targets in the open. They didn't even we fires were already cleared. Everything was good to go. So the here comes the Apaches in, and they just lit this palm grove up. If there was a hot spot, it got a Hellfire missile, or it got the chain gun just ripping it apart. And I remember looking up and seeing the Apaches doing barrel rolls
Mm-hmm.
while coming in
Yeah.
at it because the
Firing
camera
off
crew guys were sitting
flares.
there taking
Yeah.
pictures, you know.
Well,
And
I was on the rooftop of one of the houses after we'd cleared all the houses, so I was on the rooftop with Matheny, and he's on the calling in cast strikes from
yeah,
because it was a pair of wandering air weapons team Apaches that are like,
yeah,
hey, we heard there's a raid going on. We figured we'd come check it out. Do you want support? They go,
yeah,
hey, funny thing, we don't have any artillery anymore. Sure, you want to shoot some bad guys for us? So
yep,
they did, and Matheny calls up and goes, hey, by the way, uh, you know, we're an 82nd unit and we have combat camera. They're like, oh yeah, this is 82nd Air Weapons Team. Let's
yep,
put on a shoe for you. And
yeah.
the entire raid got saved by a pair of just wandering Apache helicopters.
Yeah. And they put on a show, man. They ripped that
Mm-hmm.
whole area apart. So all those guys from Syria who were going to be suicide bombers were killed.
Mm-hmm.
And I have no idea what ever happened to their families or anything else, but their families were not welcomed in the area to begin with. I don't know if we left them behind and they hurried up and ran back to Syria, which is I think what happened. But yeah, it was just a bad situation. But even our interpreters like, dude, these guys, it's like we pick up someone with a southern dialect and you'd be like, hey man, these guys are from a different area. They've come here to
Mm-hmm.
do something bad. And we were like, yep. So we ended up chasing them out, and that was Shakamaku. And that was like the first big raid that everyone really started paying attention to 573. That hey, we can do things that other units can't. The problem was it turned into kind of a slap in the face for First Cav. First Cav
Mm-hmm.
really walked out of there going, man, we look stupid. We were supposed to do this huge fire mission and we blew it. And I mean, part of it, I think they felt bad, and part of it was like, boy, we were looking incompetent, which they were. And the situation went from, well, we're not going to do, we're First Cav. We won't make that mistake again. And it the situation just kept getting worse and worse in Bakuba after we left. So it wasn't much
Mm-hmm.
after that we ended up going up to Caldwell, and I always think that was the end of our first deployment. We closed down our little patrol base. The Sheik Asani up there in Abuseda, he had enough control now. We had built a bridge with him, built reputations with him. We understood all of the people that were players, most of the people that were players in the little villages south of us. Even though they didn't wanted nothing to do with us, we knew who they were and, kind of what they looked
Mm-hmm.
like. And that lay comes back to be a huge asset to 573 later on. We were able to use our connections and our understanding of the area and people to really go after Al Qaeda. So what we did in November comes back to pay super dividends in May. So
Well, it does, but Shakumaku isn't quite the end of the first chapter.
no,
Shakumaku was the 31st, and the raid was a stellar success, even in spite of what happened.
hmm
And Captain Few went out that afternoon and talked to the sheiks of the area and got agreements and said, hey, we're here to support you. You saw what we did. You saw what
hmm
we're capable of. Are you willing to come support us? And he started making agreements and deals
yep,
based on it and making inroads with the locals. And November 1st, the next day, and I don't know who issued the orders or why, but we got recall orders to go back to Fob Caldwell with the rest of
yep,
573. I've always suspected that those came from First Cav because
they
at
did.
the time, that's what I was told. You guys are
Yep,
no longer needed here. You're
yep,
being ejected. And
yep,
no one went back to patrol Zagania or Abu Said or any of the other towns. No one started any patrol bases.
yep,
No one made inroads with any of the sheiks. No
yep,
one listened to our intel. And
yep,
on November 6th, so a week after Shakumaku, Al Qaeda came back to the middle of Zagania, where we had chased them out a week earlier, rounded up a bunch of policemen and soldiers, and beheaded them while making the entire village watch.
Oh yeah.
right in the center. And then they blew up the IP station with
Oh
suicide
yeah.
bombs and killed any government officials in town.
Yeah.
And
So this is Rockman. This is Rockman at his brutal. And if you think about it, it makes sense on Rockman's part. He had just ran into the same problem over in Ramadi, where the locals had turned on him. He wasn't going to have that happen again. So how do you stop all the locals from turning on you? You take anyone of authority and you put a bullet in their head. And this is what he does throughout all the villages, but he really does it down in Bakuba. He goes
mm-hmm,
after Bakuba in a bad way.
mm-hmm,
And he basically starts executing every single leader he can get his hands on. And by doing so, he establishes full control over that area.
yep,
And he's also got some really big supporters in the area. One of them happened to be a doctor up in Zagania. We didn't realize it at the time, but there was a Western trained doctor in Zagania. Now, we knew about the doctor. We knew that he was Western trained, but we had tried a few times to meet with the guy, and the guy just didn't want nothing to do with us. We didn't realize at the time he was hardcore Al Qaeda, and he was out to prevent us from ever getting a foothold. So, anytime we would show up in Zagania and meet with someone, soon as we left, he would go and meet with the person. "Oh, what the fuck did they want? Why were you meeting with them? Who did you talk to?" And if he didn't like the answer you gave, he went back and told Rockman. And then, and the other thing you got to keep in mind too is when Zakawi died, all right, Zakawi didn't operate in a vacuum. Zakawi had about a gang of about 20 to 30 guys that traveled with him wherever he went. And when Zakawi was killed, gang is still around and they're still loyal to Al Qaeda and they're still following orders, but they're getting orders from Rockman now. So what does Rockman do? He turns that same group, his little clique, Zakawi clique. This is Ali Latif, the Zrim. These are some. He turns
oh,
them loose.
just one
Oh,
second, I'm
did I
losing you
freeze up?
again. Okay, okay, I think you're back. Yeah, it's always in the good
So
spots.
there no, it was Zakawia's little gang that he had that helped him carry out all this brutality. Rockman turns them loose in Bakuba and says, "Be bad and make sure we
Mm-hmm,
don't have a repeat of Ramadi." And that's what they do. They kill everyone
mm-hmm.
and they torture people. They're killing people left and right. And Sammy Kareem, Ali Latif, you name it. These guys are in it. They grew up together. They know each other. And these guys are some really bad dudes. And and that right there is First Cav goes, we don't need you no more. We've got this. We know what we're doing. We're big army and we've got all the answers. And
It,
at that point, we were all happy to get the fuck away from First Cav. No one missed Camp Warhorse. No one missed First Cav. We went back to Caldwell, which is closer to the Iranian border. Now we're out in open desert kind of feelings again. And we get told, hey, there's a mission coming up. We're going to go to this village of Turkey. And there's some bad stuff going on there. And this is the other stronghold of Al Qaeda. And in the village of Turkey, there is something called the Wahhabi movement. And the Wahhabi movement is extreme Islam. And I mean, this is the level of extreme that makes most Islamic people go, ugh. I
mm-hmm.
mean, you cringe when you see these guys coming. The women are head to toe in black. You don't even see their eyes. They look through not just a slit, but there's like, over their the dress goes right to the ground. The kids don't come outside. It is extreme Islam. They live and breathe the Quran. The Quran is divine. They are living God's word, and that is it. And um, even even like I said, they make all the Shiite very uncomfortable. Now, most of these guys are Sunni. Most of the Wahhabi movement are Sunni, and they're getting their funding from Saudi Arabia. That's where a handful of big money churches are, or money mosques, and they're funneling money up into um, the Wahhabi movement. And we get orders to go and check this place out and see what's going on. So here we go. We're going to do a big mission into there. And this is known as Turkey 1. And I really think we caught Al Qaeda flat footed at this point. And I think this is where Baghdad and the powers that be in the Pentagon were surprised at our effectiveness, but
Hmm.
also really upset with themselves at the end by the way Q1 ended. What ends up happening is we end up moving into Turkey. Bravo troop is going to drive through the city. We're going to be in a blocking position, and then we're going to drive everyone across Charlie troops um, area, and Charlie troops is going to annihilate um, the um, Al Qaeda and the Wahhabi guys coming out. And this is where Carson kind of has a meltdown. For all looking the part, he's having trouble conceptualizing the battlefield. And um, on the way into Turkey, you and I were there. We were standing in
Hmm.
torture chambers where they were hanging people and taking power tools to them. And um, as we're approaching this whole thing, we've got little gunfights breaking out all over the place. And what ends up happening is I think Rockman, and I personally believe Rockman was there visiting his family and having kind of breakfast. And they said, "Hey, U.S. forces are 5 miles down the road and coming fast. What the fuck?" And at this point, there's probably about 100 to 150 dudes that are there. And all these guys get issued suicide cards.
Hmm.
And it was like this weird transgender card. It was like a rainbow looking brochure that said, "You are now authorized to go to heaven." And it's like, if you and I were handed this card, I'd be like, fuck that.
Hmm.
But these guys, they took it serious, man, and they went ahead and started to commit suicide. And what I think ended up happening is Rockman ran out into the desert, climbed into a hole, pulled a canvas over the top of him, and stayed in the hole for almost 2 weeks and never came out. He pissed, he shit, he breathed, he lived in that hole. And he had no idea what in the hell was going on with his family either, because his family and his
Hmm.
kids were there. But they were not with him, I don't believe.
Well, Turkey
Um,
One,
that was Turkey
Turkey
one. Yep.
One kind of started off accidentally. It was planned that we were going to go and start probing the area and
Yep.
looking. Uh, in other interviews, they've talked about how they realized Bravo and Charlie Troop just putting together some of the intelligence. They'd realized that the Balad Ruz area they had been using as training for different types of attacks, and
You're
it
breaking
was
up,
kind
but
of oh well they'd realized the Balad Ruz area had been used for training of different types of attacks, and so they
right.
said that hey, there's something out here in the desert. We've got intel. There's something in this area. We're gonna go check it out. And so when they
Yep.
started doing command over flights, they found the cache, and then that escalated things to being this immediate mission. And I forget the exact day. I think it was the 15th or 16th. They came back to Fob Caldwell and that of November, started kicking bunks and said, "Hey, get spun up. We're going out. We got a mission
Yep.
now." And
Yep.
that's when Alpha Troop, if I remember right, went way out north and east and came around. Um,
I don't remember.
I honestly don't remember at that time. It was just
Yeah.
high desert
Well,
drive for days, you know.
yeah.
But
Well, it was really kind of confusing because
yeah.
in to put this in perspective, we talked about it earlier that it was a big farm area and it's
Mm-hmm.
reasonably flat. What's going on though is over the centuries they have dug
Mm-hmm.
trenches or canals throughout the area to do irrigation. Um, they dug a whole bunch back in the Syrian time and Mesopotamia. This was a big farm area. And then the British dug more after World War
Mm-hmm.
II. They had decided it was going to be a big farm area again. Um, except the land has been reasonably salted, so you're not going to grow wheat and corn or anything like that. You can grow rice, you can grow a handful of crops, more like your melons and stuff like that, but
Hmm.
you're not going to grow the cereal crops that, we're more accustomed to. Um, so, what this ends up doing though is making it very difficult to maneuver. You go driving, and all of a sudden you're like, dude, we got to get over there, but there's a big ass ditch in the way. How the hell are we gonna do that? And you end up driving like
Oh,
3 miles one
no,
way, going
yeah,
over a little berm, and then back. And it's a
and
it's a real
not
pain.
even ditches. Like the main irrigation canals could be
Yeah.
20 feet deep and 30 feet wide.
Oh
That
yeah.
you could
And full
drive
of
a full vehicle through them, full of water or vegetation that would grow like full trees growing out of
yeah,
it. So,
exactly. And there's no seeing it. You have no idea what's
mm,
even in these ditches.
mm,
And so we're all trying to maneuver to different locations. And what ends up happening is Charlie Troop gets and Carson gets confused and yeah, and he ends up calling in fire on his own location. And the Apaches are up
mm,
listening to this, going, um, "No," and they tell him no like 3 times over the radio. No, the Apache pilots are saying no to him, and he's calling in fire, and they're like, "No," and finally, Few gets on the radio, and he's like, "Yeah, right. It's a big no. I'm on my way to your location." And we end up racing um to Charlie Troop, and we actually Alpha Troop and Charlie Troop link up. And I remember, and I was talking to Kumar
that's where
about
we
this.
ran into the squirters on the way. That's
Yeah,
where Keely and I got ambushed and ran
well,
off.
you right after that, you guys got ambushed. We got
Oh, it
ambushed
was at okay.
right
Mm,
after that. So we end up meeting up with Charlie Troop. And at this point, no one had killed. All right. We're meeting up with Charlie Troop. We know we've got hostiles in the area. We're trying to figure it out. I don't know where headquarters was at that time, and I don't know where
mhm,
Bravo Troop was at this time. But Alpha and Charlie Troop link up, and it's not all of Alpha Troop. It's just
mhm,
basically first platoon and a headquarters element. And something had happened, because none of the terrain is smooth. So like you're up in the gun, you're just getting
mhm.
charred, charred, charred.
Yeah,
And like one of my ammo cans had kind of broken free a little bit, so I was restrapping it. And I remember looking back over my shoulder, and I remember seeing Carson just take a roundhouse swing right at Few. And these two guys were cussing at each other,
mm,
screaming. And Few comes staggering up. Pavlik, did you see that? He just tried to hit me. He's got like a big shiver, and I'm like, you two are fucking idiots, man. There's people all over the place trying to kill us, and you guys are getting into a fist fight. And um, at this point, Pappas rolls up, and I'm like,
mm.
oh, great, here we go. And I didn't mind Pappas staying there, but here comes Edgar. Edgar comes storming out, and I could just tell Edgar's head in one of his like, this is not the day for an Edgar day, man. And he was having an Edgar day. Um, and I was like, oh shit, here we go. And I just kind of hunkered down in the gun, like, don't look at me, don't talk to me, I don't want anything to do with you. And I can hear what Few and Pappas are talking about. And Few's like, listen, he's supposed to be here, he's not here. He's
Mm,
supposed to be doing missions over here, they're not going off. So here's what I think we should do. I'm going to take Alpha Troop and I'm going to go to Rockman's house and I'm going to make it our base. All right. We're going to be I think, on the southwest side of the village Turkey. And at this point, and then Pappas is like, I'll take Charlie Troop and I'll swing out into this huge blocking position. And we'll just basically sit on this area and we're going to see what moves. And if anything moves, we're going to shoot it. And it sounds like a great idea. And at this point, we start splitting up, and this is where Charlie Troop loses 2 guys.
mhm,
And what ends up happening is you have one guy come out of the palm grove, out of the ditch. All right, not a palm grove, out of the ditch, reads, and he surrenders. He puts up his hands,
mhm,
hey, ah," and he drops to his knees and surrenders. The as you approach to detain the guy or engage the guy, we're suddenly engaged by small arms fire.
mhm,
And a lot of the small arms fire is armor piercing rounds. So
mhm,
these things are not just, they're going right through ballistic windows, they're going right through body armor, they're going, 2 inches into plate steel. These things are bad. And that's what these guys have. And this is what, these two officers, this is how they end up dying is,
Mhm.
and I can't remember their names right offhand, but they ended
It
up
was
going,
Captain
yeah,
Dennison and Schiller.
yeah,
Yeah,
they go
with
to detain
Bravo
a
and
guy who
Charlie.
is surrendered. And as
Yeah.
they approached, they got riddled with bullets. And
And the crazy thing was that the same time when that was happening with them, we were slowed down because three guys squirted out, did the
yep,
same to us, and that's when
yep,
Keely and I approached them. They opened
yep,
fire. One guy surrenders, and I later on, when we found the Al Qaeda manual, that's what it had said: is if you were out of ammunition, surrender, but your buddies will try and kill them, and that's what they did.
yeah,
So
yeah,
our firefight was less than 75 feet away from them,
right.
with these
So
armor piercing
So
bullets. So
so what
yeah.
ends up happening is you guys are in a gunfight. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the way I remember everything going on. I think I got
Mm-hmm.
this one pretty much spot. I relived this one a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a not a big ditch. There was just a ditch and it was like reinforced cement.
Yeah, it
And
was
we had
cement
a problem.
lined.
And you guys, for some drive truck had to one side and the which in is a big no-no.
Mm-hmm.
Do I need to repeat that? Did we freeze up again?
Yeah, you got a little bit
Um,
split up, but basically, I know the platoon got split into two because of the
yeah,
ditch.
the
Yeah.
Bravo section got split. Alpha section and Bravo section, we were kind of operating independently. Two trucks here, two
Mm-hmm.
trucks there. And Bravo section, you guys had split again, where you guys were each on one side of a ditch,
Mm-hmm.
a reinforced cement ditch. And there was still vegetation growing in it, but it was hardened with a lined concrete bottom. And you both of you guys were basically on your own if you got in trouble, and you got in trouble. So
Mm-hmm.
one guy surrenders and Keeley steps out to detain this guy, and then all of a sudden they just start rifling the hell out of the five truck, and at the same time the four truck pulls up on the wrong side of the ditch and tries to engage him. So now these two guys are engaging in two different directions,
Mm-hmm.
and simultaneously Randolph's 50 cal goes
Mm-hmm.
into full meltdown.
Yeah,
And
one in a million breakage in the
yeah,
bolts. It was
exactly.
insane.
And Randolph and the crew serve weapon on the five truck becomes useless.
Mm-hmm.
Keeley is in an exposed position, and that leaves you to do suppression. At the same time, the four truck is out of position, and you guys are getting the hell shot out of you. And this is with armor piercing rounds, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
bad situation all the way around. And Alpha section, we realize what's going on. We come to your spot and we realize the five truck is out of position. You were on the wrong side of a canal doing the wrong thing. And the problem is Sergeant Gonzalez has dismounted and he doesn't know where he's taking all of his fire from. And this is
Mm-hmm.
a simple understanding like, hey, you are in a bad spot. And he's like, am I taking fire from up here? Am I taking fire from just down here? I know I've got two guys here shooting at us and keeping us suppressed. And these two guys are not incompetent. They know what they're doing with
Mm-hmm.
AKs
Mm-hmm.
and with grenades. And
Yes.
so Sergeant Gonzalez is like, clear that hill really fast and then come back to me. So Bennett and Anderson are like, "Yep, let's go clear that hill," which is smart. We go flying down the ditch. There's no one on the hill. We're all clear. We roll back around. Now things get dumb. What should have happened is we should have pushed all the way down to the four truck, mass troops, and pushed through
Mm-hmm.
and annihilate these guys. Instead, Lieutenant Anderson brings us two-thirds of the way back, stops, and then dismounts. And what he's done, and this is where you get lieutenants who don't understand what they're doing. He's maneuvered his troops into a blue on blue situation.
Mm-hmm.
So we have basically surrounded these guys or on three sides, and we're all shooting at each other, at these guys, and by consequence, shooting at each other.
Mm-hmm.
And Sergeant G, I think, realizes that you guys are out of position. Only he's not in a position to yell at Anderson, get back in your trucks and get the fuck
Mm-hmm.
down here. And Meyer and Bennett just, they're not getting it. And I'm
Hmm.
like, and I'm yelling at everyone, get back in your trucks, get back in your trucks. And because the armor, because they're like, Pavlik, we're getting shot at. And I'm like, yeah, that's Ventura's bullets whizzing
Hmm.
by your ears. Get back in your truck. No, 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 Pavlik. And Gonzalez finally realizes he's got to do something. So he steps forward, he throws a grenade, throws it over the ditch, and one of the guys who had been doing suppression jumps on top of it,
Hmm.
blows up. And I remember seeing the guy come up level with the palm with all the reeds and go flat back down.
Hmm.
And I come up with my 240, and this guy has Sergeant Gonzalez dead to rights. I mean, Gonzalez is fully
Hmm.
exposed, and he just, aha, I got you. And right as he's looking down the barrel of his AK to kill Gonzalez, I chopped the guy's head off. I took him
Hmm.
right from about the mouth up. His head dis obliterates, and that's the first guy I'd actually shot with a anything. Um, and yeah, Sergeant Gonzalez is like, you know,
Hmm.
um, and then and that was a gosh, 300, not 300, 200 meter shot I did with that. Um, but end up killing the guy.
Oh, I don't
And
remember.
then we
Yeah.
pushed down slowly to where you guys were at,
Yeah.
making sure there was no one else.
Yeah.
And um, at this point, Gonzalez is like pissing himself, which is fair.
Mhm.
And Keeley is fucked up.
Yeah.
We
I
the five
I
truck
didn't know
is
at the
riddled full.
time. He actually had concussion and hearing damage from the grenades.
Yeah, yeah,
I didn't,
they had
but I did
homemade
too, and I didn't
grenades.
realize he was fucked up
Yeah,
because I didn't realize I was fucked up. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Only we're all talking, we're all yelling at each other, and
Yeah. Hmm.
it's, it's there's still adrenaline going on, like times of stuff.
Oh no,
And
this some.
there
I
was
think
a
it's on your own. Okay. Fucking Comcast.
uh-oh.
Sorry. Sorry, I swallowed again. No, that
So,
that whole
yeah,
situation
but there
was.
was a lot. It's Are you there?
Yeah. Are we caught up?
And
Maybe. Maybe. Oh no. Uh. Yeah. Okay.
all right,
Sorry
there we
about
go.
that.
That
I
seems a
was
little bit better.
I was gonna say, yeah, the whole situation was frustrating. Well, for a couple of reasons. First of all, like after that, when we got back to Caldwell, I know we started training differently, but also, at that time, for whatever reason, they refused to train cavalry scouts on fucking basic infantry battle drills. I don't know
Mm.
why, but when you go through basic, you would never get trained. I got trained on it because one of my drills that filled in was an infantryman, and he insisted we learn the basic six battle drills, and all the other cadre would laugh at him for teaching. Well, scouts never need to know this. Yeah, they do. So that way you don't perform a battle drill, one and end up in the line of fire of friendly troops. And that's
Well,
exactly why, because you never know, depending on what your job is, you could end up doing that. And
yeah.
then with Keely and I, doing a high rate of fire trying to suppress these fuckers, our weapons were fine, but we kept having malfunctions, misfires and feeds, or I'm sorry, misfeeds, because the magazines we've been issued were so fucking junked that the feed lips were warped. And there's nothing you can really do about that. So after that, I started buying all those third party magazines. I know Sergeant Gonzalez gave me shit about why are you spending all your money on it? Because, dude, I almost fucking died because your issued magazines almost killed me. Okay. Like, I'm going to spend my
Yeah.
money on magazines because if I die, then I don't care how much money I spent on them. But if I
Yeah.
survive, it was worth it.
Well, and
Like,
and this is where like having and Gonzalez and I talked a lot about this and his
mm-hmm,
frustration level with all of it because
mm-hmm.
I've been to SUT. I had
Yeah.
not just done, a little bit of ranger training in it
Mm-hmm,
or, gotten ranger shape. He's like, no, you've gone to SUT. He's like, you are a master at this quick maneuvers like this because this is all you do for almost 6 weeks nonstop.
mm-hmm.
And when you're done with the 6 weeks, they finally take you to the shoot houses and Sabat and I had started the shoot houses because they didn't want to board us.
Hmm.
It was only until we insisted that we don't want to be here no more that they were finally like, okay, you guys are going to get boarded and you'll recycle, and we never recycled. But we had both mastered the fast shoot maneuver stuff. So
Hmm.
there were days when I'm in SUT, and I'm not exaggerating when I say I shot 20,000 bullets out of a saw. So, I mean, I was really good at this close in ambushes, doing exactly what we were doing in Turkey
Hmm.
1. And um this is also when Third Platoon got into their scenario with
Hmm.
with the guys, and what ends up happening is when Rockman is pinned in a hole, they disperse all of his little supporters that are loyal to him. They disperse, and they can maneuver without us realizing it because they're walking down through these little canals, and we just can't see them. So,
Hmm.
the plan is to set all the little canals we can on fire and just burn the shit out of them. So we're taking fuel trucks and just dumping gas into these things and then set the whole thing on fire and just let it burn. So there are massive fireballs going off everywhere. And I remember the fuel truck guys were like complaining, like, why didn't we hit a cache? And I'm like, then it blows up. And then, well, if we're close to it, then you blow up with it. So don't be there when we set it on fire, motherfucker. You know, but there are some really cool photos when we ended up
Hmm.
going to Rockman's house, that the whole area in front of the house is 50-foot flames just roaring through. And there are some really neat photos of us walking into Rockman's house, and the world behind us is engulfed on fire. And I always thought those were cool. But
Hmm.
there's a scenario too, and I don't know if Kinsler covered it or not, where Third Platoon is getting engaged. Jeter and I talked a lot about this when we had our last reunion. Um, that there was an engagement going on where guys were throwing grenades over a
Hmm.
ditch onto Third Platoon, and they couldn't figure out what in the hell was going on. They knew where the guys were, but they just had no way of engaging them. And these homemade grenades were, and that's what they were, was homemade grenades. They were an explosive with no shrapnel, essentially.
Hmm.
Uh, and so, because they didn't have anything to pack around their grenade, they had some, a lighter, and they would set them on fire and throw them, and they were heavy, but there was no metal packed around them to really do a lot of damage. So, in a lot of ways, they were like a very vicious flashbang. And this is what is getting tossed at Third Platoon. And what ends up happening is a Predator drone is overhead, and the Predator drone is capturing the whole thing. And people in Baghdad are watching this, and they can't figure out how to get a message um, them, from the Predator to them, from them to Alpha Troop down to Third Platoon to let us know what in the world's going on. The system isn't quite designed yet to do that. Um, and no one had thought, well, we just send them a message through the FBCB system and just, send them a text message. And that was,
Hmm.
nowadays, that's probably exactly what would happen in a battle
It
space.
was
But
2006,
yeah,
like,
exactly.
yeah.
We're still using flip phones. Come on,
Hmm.
motherfucker. So, the situation gets so what ends up happening is Kim ends up shooting a 203 just out of hack, and he drops it perfectly in between these
Hmm.
guys throwing grenades and kills them. And no one in Third Platoon even knows it happened. They just know that the grenades stopped flying at them, and they stay there for probably 20 to 30 minutes waiting, trying to figure out how to get across, and they can't get over there. And I think it was Jeter's truck had the tires blown out from the
Hmm.
grenades and everything. So, I mean, these things are doing damage. They're just not like what you think a grenade should do. And the whole time, we're all fucked up. First platoon, we've moved just a little bit from where we were engaged at, and when I say a little bit, I mean like a football field. We're like 100 yards from where you
Hmm.
guys had messed up. We moved your truck around. Headquarters had come and joined us, And McTheany and Few are just in this nonstop little fight where McTheany's like, I have to go save third platoon. Third platoon's gonna die if I don't go and save them. And the whole time, Few's like, no, we need to get medevac. Keeley, I think, is fucked up, and we gotta get him out of here. And McTheany just doesn't want to hear it. And finally, McTheany's like, fine, go. We have embedded mechanics and some support elements. McTheany takes off with them. And I don't even know if you gave him permission or not. McTheany just left. So it was really me and Anderson, Private Anderson, who ended up
Mm-hmm.
calling in medevac for Keeley. Like, hey, we need medevac. We got a guy injured. Can we get medevac in here? Anderson just stood right up. Here's a private. We figured this out in, air assault school where he had been to. He, because we had gone to so many schools, he's like, I'll hold the BMS panel, Sergeant. And I was like, all right, I'll talk him in. Here comes the pilots just land. Keeley hops on, away he goes. And that was, we didn't see Keeley for what, another week or so after that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the Patterson jumps over in your truck. We kind of
Mm-hmm.
don't even miss a beat. Alpha Troops are like, okay,
Oh
we
yeah.
re we reload. And then by this
Mm-hmm.
point, Few's like, all right, Rockman's house is,
Mm-hmm.
2 miles down the road. And away we go down to Rockman's house. And, we've got, oh shit. Who's walking in with few with everything on fire? But we end up setting everything up on fire. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think
I don't
literally,
remember anymore.
Rockman's family runs right out the back of the house. His wife and kids run
Mm-hmm.
out the back of the house while we are coming in the front of the house. That's how we caught everyone completely off guard.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was really kind of an odd situation in that there was still hot food on the stove for his kids. That's how close we were. And don't get me wrong, I don't think we would have done anything to kids. I mean,
Oh
we
no.
were we were
Mm-mm.
pretty violent
No.
dudes, but that's we have a level of respect for the people we're fighting and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And
Yeah. That being said, we took.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. No.
And but
Mm-mm.
they took off. I mean, they literally ran out the back, and there was, a ditch in the back of the house with more weeds, and I think they ran in there and hid in there for 3 or 4 days. Um, and no one ever came around the house. But what ends up happening is McTheany gets over to where third platoon is, and he's like, "Where's everyone at? What's going on?" And they're like, "Yeah, and there's nothing going on. We're putting tires on the truck. We're going to leave." And McTheany evidently rips a grenade off Jeter's belt and throws it over the berm and tells everyone that he's killed everyone on that side of the berm. And Jeter's just like, "What the fuck are you doing, man?" And yeah, I mean, he's looking at McTheany like this is dumb.
Mm-mm.
And at this point, Charlie Troop is losing their shit too because they've got
Mm-hmm.
two officers dead. They know they're out of position. This was going to be kind of like, yeah, it's just not good. And so what ends up happening is we go down to Rockman's house. We make it into a little base. We got some Iraqi forces with us. We're eating the food in the pantry. The Iraqis that are with us are like, hey, do you want some chicken? There's a chicken walking around over there. Let's kill it and eat it. I'm like, all right, sounds cool. Hey man, we got some kid cereal here. You want some kid cereal? I'm like, no, not really, but you can have at it. There's no milk to go with it. Well, there's a goat over there. We're gonna kill the goat too. I was like, well, if you insist, man. And we end up pulling up turning into a little patrol base, and I'm up on top of the base, and you know, I kind of lay out a quick range car thing. Sergeant Gonzalez asked me to do that, and while I'm standing over top of the base, down in the kitchen, McTheany and Few are in another heated fight. And what had happened was Few had decided that there's an Islamic part of the Islamic culture is you have to have your dead buried so quickly after they die. I don't know if it's really in the Quran or if it's just good practice. I think it's a bit of both. But so Feud gets this bright idea that he's going to put an OP over top of the guys that Alpha Troop had killed earlier that day. So he sends Bennett, Myers, and I think Barnes, maybe Patterson out on an OP. And from their OP, Charlie Troop can see them. And Charlie Troop is constantly calling it, trying to call in fire on our guys.
Mm,
And Fuse like, no, those are our dudes. Leave them alone. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And Charlie Troop's like, no, we got four guys. They're hostiles. We'll light them up. And Fuse like, no, those are my guys. Don't you shoot. And the guys from Charlie Troop, they are getting pissed. I mean, really mad that they're not clearing fires. And they're threatening to just engage directly. They're trying to maneuver onto us to engage us. And Fuse, like, listen, you can see that they're Americans, man. You can see it in their night vision. They're wearing body armor, man. These are not Al Qaeda guys. Don't fucking care. They're gonna die. And finally, Fuse, like, gets on the radio with Bennett. And he's like, get the fuck out of there, man. Charlie Troop's got to kill something. And if you guys are outside right now, it's going to be you. So Bennett grabs his guys and he's hauling ass back to Rockman's house as quickly as he can, trying to get away from Charlie Troop. And Charlie Troop was that messed up during this mission. I mean, they really were confused. Um, and I don't really blame them for being confused. I mean, they had lost two guys.
yeah,
It
losing
was
those
a
two officers was a big,
yeah,
big unexpected hit. Yeah.
yeah, and it really made something that was supposed to be a reasonably simple mission into a
Hmm.
real gut kick. And the whole time this is going on, McTheany is below us, just on and on and on about how he needs a medal and that he saved their platoon and blah blah blah. And Fuse like, no, man, you're not getting a medal. Shut the fuck up. And he just will not leave it alone. And the whole time I'm literally standing like 8 feet above him, filling out range cards, listening to this, listening to the radios. I can hear everything that's going on. And I remember looking over to my right, going, okay, the Charlie Troop should be right over there. And all of a sudden I saw a big flash. And that's when Lily got hurt because they
Hmm.
actually had an ID within the area that they were
Hmm.
setting up, going to make their base. They find out there's an IED planted in it. It wasn't like Al Qaeda knew to plant an IED there. It just happened to be a bad spot they had
Hmm.
chosen, dumb luck or bad luck. And Lily got hurt, and the next thing I know, McDaney's standing behind me, and he's so pissed off, and he's sitting there shaking, like, Pavlik, I need a medal, and I'm like, and I have like no respect for this guy anyway, and I'm just like, leave, just leave, and he's just shaking. And I remember looking at him and I say, leave, just leave. And he turned around and walked away from me. And yeah, it was not a good situation with him.
Hmm.
And um, yeah, but later on we stayed there in Turkey, what, another 4 or 5 days. And this it showed the goods and the bads of the Rista really come out in Turkey
Yeah.
one. And what's the goods and the bads are, the good is how fast we can act onto something and adjust our battle plan because we had
Hmm.
everything we needed to stay there and continue the fight. The problem that we ran into was a sustained, long, drawn out
Hmm.
fight. We got
Yeah.
exhausted, really exhausted, sitting out
Hmm.
there on that in this area, and we needed support. And I think Baghdad just didn't want to give it. And I don't know if they didn't
Yeah.
want to give it or if they couldn't give it. But
It was a really remote area too. So
yeah,
just getting support out there
yeah.
was
But what
difficult.
needed to happen
Yeah.
was, and I never understood why they just didn't pack up two Panther, kind of scrub a
Hmm.
few SF missions, pack up two Panther, and drop two Panther
Hmm.
right on top of us and say,
Yeah.
stay put, figure it out.
Hmm.
And it didn't happen, and I think if they had done that, because I think we were really close to actually, breaking that whole situation open.
Hmm.
And if we had caught Rockman at that time, uh, the war in Iraq really probably would have fizzled probably by, Christmas time. But there was nothing. And then
Yeah.
finally it was like, okay, well, we're not getting any support and there's no reason to stay here. The
Hmm.
gunfights kind of piddled out after about a day or two of the initial gunfights. Everything
Well,
kind of
we ended
fizzled.
up getting a lot of air support. We dropped a lot of
Yeah,
bombs. F-16s came in, CAS came in
yeah.
the next day.
F-15s came
Um,
in. I remember we were
we,
at one point right after we were there with
mhm,
headquarters, and it was one of these days where Edgar's just being Edgar. But I was like doing something and like an F-15 came in and did a strafing run on one
mhm.
of the ditches right beside us. And
Yeah.
man, it brought, because I had no idea, even though I
Mhm.
guess they had told everyone, for some reason it had just missed me. And then they came
Yeah.
by with this strafing run. And I was like, oh God.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
and I think, I mean, yeah, I should have shit myself. That thing was scared the fuck out of me so bad.
Well, remember
Um,
we all got onto line in the desert and just
yeah,
did like
yeah,
turned it we turned it into a maneuver cleanup. They were
yep,
still doing hit and run, but most of it was a delaying action of the first night to
yep,
try and like even the ambush that I ran into, that was a delaying action to keep us from closing quicker. And that's why they were doing small unit tactics popping up here and
hmm,
there to make it look like they were larger, just
yep,
to let the high value targets get away. I
yeah,
know we got
ex
ambushed with the grenades. Like they did that a lot. Patterson and I and Randolph, we got hit again the next day with it on the
yep,
berm. That's when I
yep,
jumped the Humvee off the berm because I was like, I don't want them to. I was afraid they would get a grenade down the hatch and then we'd be
yeah,
screwed. But you know,
yeah.
they're like,
And but but after, a day after that,
mhm.
everything really
Yeah,
kind of dwindled. And we were there
yeah,
for another 2 to 3 days, kind of running little patrols, trying to find
mhm.
guys, trying to figure out what's going on. And
They'd all squirted away.
yeah, and not
Yeah,
only that, but all the locals went and
yep,
hid, everything got
mhm.
quiet, and we just got exhausted.
Yeah,
We were so tired. And finally, it was like, it's time to leave. And
mhm.
I remember I was lead truck, and we very slowly made our way down through town to let everyone know that, okay, you survived this time, but we'll be back.
Mhm.
We did. It was right after New Year's we came back, and
Mhm.
Turkey 2 kicked off. At this point, though, most of the high value targets were not in Turkey. This was just going
Mhm.
to be a straight up gunfight. Um, and yeah, that's how that all played out.
Mhm.
So, um, and I guess that is the next big thing, isn't it? You know, what was it, November we did Turkey 1, and then January 4th of 2007 we
Mhm.
kicked off Turkey 2. And that was a slow, methodical grind your way into Turkey.
Yeah.
And that
The,
this is the winter of in Iraq at this point.
I
So,
know they'd had a lot of different plans.
yeah.
The plans for us to do an air insertion, a parachute jump in and surround Turkey would have been cool. I would have loved that. Doing an actual combat jump into Iraq would have been cool as hell. Like it's every paratrooper's dream to do that, but
Yeah.
realistically, feasibly, landing in mud so thick it can stop a tank and then sitting there for 2 to 4 weeks, no, it
No.
just would not have worked.
So
Like,
what so when Turkey 2 kicks off,
mhm,
and we're going back in, this time we have support of the 100 of first cav, and we
mhm.
have armor units with us.
We had a
Additionally,
couple two panther, I think there was some two panther, some 25th ID. We had a big
yeah,
coalition that came
yeah, there
through.
was a lot
Yeah.
more dudes.
Yeah.
And Bravo Troop is supposed to be the lead this time. And you keep
Hmm.
in mind, in Turkey 1, Alpha Troop, I bet you we did 60% of the major fighting in Turkey 1 just because of where few kept positioning us.
Yes.
Again, he could understand the battle space.
Yeah.
Charlie Troop was kind of relegated to a blocking position. Bravo Troop was not moving it nearly as fast as we were. It wasn't until we got to the end where we did these big clearings where also we formed a big blocking position and Charlie Troop cleared through. But it was really Alpha Troop ended up carrying a lot of the workload with Turkey 1.
Mhm.
And that was largely due to just few understanding the battle space. He could conceptually understand where everyone was at and then he would work to put us in the best positions to do the most damage, which usually meant he put me in a position because I was lead gun. I
Mhm.
did a lot of shooting, man. Even though in hindsight, I don't think I shot that many people. I did a lot of shooting, or I was in positions to do a lot of shooting.
Mhm.
Though it seemed like most of everything we did was just airstrikes, and more
Yeah,
airstrikes.
yeah, we did a lot of casts.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then Turkey 2 kicks off, and it's after New Year's. We're working our way in, and this again, we start coming around all the torture houses, and
Mhm.
I remember we and we were going through the one house, and all those the ceiling with blood and everything on them, and it was like this really um crazy situation. And I'm like, and we had Robinson with us. Dr. Robinson was the first he had to a lot of these. Oh, did I lose you again?
Yeah, you
Sean,
know
you
what?
look pretty
I'm gonna
stiff there.
pause
I
it.
did it. One of the great things about 5-7 is how we were able to do 5-7-3 was able to do a lot of different things very, very quickly. And
Oh yeah.
we were able to walk in so many different worlds and be
It's
successful at it.
it's what makes telling the story very difficult. Because not only is the timeline split between different things you
Yeah.
kind of come and go to, it's twisted up and different. It's just a massive shift. It's like just the opening 3 4 months when we get into the Alpha Troop story up through November is this really
Mhm.
cool, interesting, compelling story that's got intrigue and working through sectarian battles and like
Yeah.
mafiosos and raids and all this cool shit. And then you get into this intrigue between like, American army units and there's this, you know, conflict of personalities, and then they stop, and then Al Qaeda comes and kills everyone. And what happens next? Fucking chapter ends and you start a whole nother thing somewhere else. It's like, wait, what? And then,
So
oh, 4 months later, you're going to be coming back.
so what ends up happening is we are doing these two missions, big missions in
Mhm.
Turkey, and we're trying to do interdiction up and down along the Iranian border. And the whole time, the situation that we left in Bakuba, that was quiet when we left and first Cav had it under control, is now growing out of control. And we continuously hear rumors and intel that things are bad in Bakuba. And the first squadron, first of 112 Cav that's there, is dramatically unprepared for what's going on. They are losing guys, and they are losing a lot of guys. And I don't mean they're just getting injured. I mean they've got a high mortality rate going on.
When they
And
first
what you,
transitioned in, within their first month or two, they took 26 killed in action for their
yeah,
brigade. Just
yeah,
walked in the door, got slammed. I'll post it when I edit. I actually have a
yep.
book written by a guy who was in first cav and just transferred in before going. And what he was saying is just damning. It's insane. They were not prepared.
Well, in their defense, this unit was probably the most unprepared unit that
Mhm.
First Cav had. They they
Mhm.
they didn't go to any training. They didn't do anything. They really were not even supposed to deploy. It
Mm.
wasn't, it was just, I think, the fact that Petraeus brought them along and they said, okay, what's the easiest, safest place we can put this unit? Because they're not ready.
Mm.
And they go, Bakuba, that's got to be it. Look, it's wonderful. There's nothing going on there. First, we already killed Zakawi. Oh, everything's great. And they drop them in there. And then things went really haywire. And not only did it go haywire, you have two kinds of people and you have two kinds of units. You have a unit that, and a guy who can get punched in the face, and is the guy going to get up? And is he going to come back and be tougher for it? Or do you have a guy who's going to get punched in the face and just go down and stay down? And you have units like that. And that's what ended up happening. That's the difference between 573 and the first Cav unit that was in Bakuba. The unit in Bakuba got punched in the face hard, really hard, and they just kind of wilted under what Al Qaeda was doing. And with us, you punched us in the face and hold on. because we're going to cut the town in two. And that's what we did. Um,
I always think back to General Jim Gavin's
Not
quote
breaking up.
from World War II. Oh,
I think it's
I
got to
say
be me because I storm.
it's probably your storms coming in.
I think it is. I literally, and I think if I went ahead and complained to Infinity right now, they'd be like, "It's not us. We're perfect." Um,
No, I was saying I
but
always think of that quote by Jim Gavin, the Major General of the 82nd in World War II, where he said, "Show me a man who will jump out of an airplane, and I'll show you a man who will fight."
yeah,
And just by and large, a lot of success that I see from 573 was just coming from a culture of the paratrooper background, because it starts at combating your fears of just getting out of a fucking airplane door, and the camaraderie behind it, and the self-sufficiency of it. Like, you don't know who you're landing with, and you rely on
right,
your buddy behind you to check your gear regardless of rank. And while
right,
hierarchy matters, everyone has to cross train in different
right.
ways and be adaptable, and it pays off at every level, up and down.
I think you're absolutely right, but I also think it's kind of the outliers again.
Mm-hmm.
You got the
Yeah.
dirty dozen. You punch,
Mm-hmm.
Charles Bronson in the face, and he's going to get pissed off. You might knock out a tooth, and he's going to get
Mm-hmm.
really pissed off. And that's kind of the way we were, man.
Oh
We
yeah.
were always the oddball group in garrison, and we got
Mm-hmm.
used to getting kicked and getting the shitty details and the shitty work and everything like that. And that carried over into warfare,
Mm-hmm.
I always have that old saying, you want to pick 20 guys to go get into a fight. You don't go to a boxing arena or you don't go to, the kung fu place. You go to prison and you pick up
Mm-hmm.
20 guys who know how to fight. And that's what you got. So, um, and sorry for getting emotional. Like I said, I was doing
No.
all the mental stuff this morning with mental health, and it's carrying over into this, and I
Mm-hmm.
makes me uncomfortable to do it, but um I think it's for the better, but still it's like
No, I appreciate it, because this is the kind of thing that I really think needs to be seen and needs to be recorded. I've talked about it privately. I know it's very difficult for people to talk about the hard stuff or what they've experienced, what they've gone through. I've considered doing like my own monologue videos about
right.
some of it. I just don't want to make it about me. You know what I mean? I'm not
I
trying to be
know,
like, this
I
is
know.
me, but also it's kind of a thing where I feel it does need to be breached, if not for us, at least for families or for someone
Right.
else to realize, like, we do still carry these things today. I still remember all the people that I put in body bags. It's like,
Yeah.
it weighs on you, and it doesn't look like it on the outside because we've gotten very good at hiding it. And part of that, again, with the 15 months being stuck overseas, you couldn't let your guard go down. You got very
Yeah.
good at internalizing it, and in some ways, it's very difficult to let that go, even with mental health professionals. And I've just found that these kind of storytelling interviews, in a way, they seem to help me a lot. And I've heard from other people privately, it really helps them hearing or seeing other people talking about, or just being able to show emotions one way or another.
Right.
I actually think, you know what, it is strength. Like, it's not. I don't
Well,
know. It doesn't test my masculinity to fucking cry. Like.
it's not so much that too. And the other thing is, when we were deployed, there was never a day off. It's not like
Mhm.
ever there was a break. I can only remember one day where you and I didn't have something to go do. And I don't mean something to do. I mean like 4 to 5 hours of real work. And it was the one day we were at Bakuba. And we were sitting in Bakuba and we're looking around and we're like, well, what do you want to do? I I I don't know. What do you want to do? Uh, do you want to go to the PX? Well, so we go to the PX. It takes 20 minutes. And now what? Amount of ideas. You want to watch a movie? Yeah, it's a shitty movie, man. I don't. You want to go get something to eat? I'm kind of full. Didn't we eat? Yeah. What else you want to do? And I think we went to the pool.
Mhm.
And we're
Mhm.
like, we were swimming in the pool, and we're like, there's a pool. Okay, let's go to the pool. And we swam in the pool, and we're like, after like a half hour, we're like, okay, now what? I don't know because we've never had a day off. Everyone asks me how was
Yeah.
deployment, and I was like, it's Monday. Every
Yeah.
single day is Monday,
Hmm.
and it never ends. And you lose track. You don't even know what day of the week it is. You really don't know what date it is, other than it's a date on top of either a form or a sit rep.
Hmm.
You, you know, it's just the next day. It's the Monday. What is today? Monday. What's tomorrow? Monday. What's the day after that?
Hmm.
Monday. It's just Monday every day. So it's like, are we running a mission today? Yeah, of course we are. Are we on guard today? But we did, back on point, Turkey too,
Hmm.
and that was just after New Year's. And I don't think we had gone back to war scenes. We had to go back a few times and do because they were so fucked up they couldn't do QRF. Um, and we were running into those problems. They were having trouble with QRF, so we had to run back to first cav and start doing QRF. I don't think we did any of those till after Turkey
We
2,
did the
but I might.
shaping operations. So we were doing air assault missions in between. And I
Yeah,
think we usually went through Caldwell, but then there's that one, there was enemies that were coming in around us, and then a
yeah.
storm was coming in at the same time, and they took us to Warhorse because they couldn't get us to Caldwell. That was the only one I
Oh,
remember. The Chinooks.
yeah. The Chinooks. Well,
Yeah.
that was a different mission because we did the big Chinook
What's that?
one. That was that was the one that Bennett that I had to do all the land nav on. That was kind of cool. I actually liked that one, but it was miserably cold.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Middle of
yep.
fucking
And
winter.
I don't remember when that happened. Did that happen before or after Turkey? See, this is where I started getting confused on
Mhm.
timetables. And in the same way, the other big mission that we ran was the river crossing. That one we've got to talk about. Because that mission had real implications on everything. Um, because that
I
one,
don't remember. I remember that mission. I don't remember
yeah,
when that happened.
exactly. We weren't, I don't think we were at Warhorse at the time. We were still, well, but for some reason we went back down to Warhorse to do the mission. But that doesn't make sense to me either. Like, shit. And I was kind of hoping one of us had photos of it with a date on it so we could actually put it more in perspective. But that's an important mission. We actually have to talk about that mission and Alpha Troop pulling that mission because that mission really some groundwork for all the intelligence breakouts that we had following. And I think what happened is we were just getting back to Warhorse and we did that mission really fast and we got in a lot of trouble for it. And then it turned out to be a big intelligence coup.
So
Like,
I think we finished Turkey by the end of January,
yep,
and then it was early February. You and I both went on leave, and so we left for 2 weeks, came back. By the time we came back, I don't know. We ended up Alpha Troop ended up, or the whole squadron ended up back at Warhorse. About that, God, were we? We were in and out of Warhorse all the time. The squadron HQ was at Warhorse for a while, and then Bravo and Charlie Troop were there, and then we were still at Caldwell.
no, no, we
God, oh
preceded
man.
everyone. I know. That's what I'm saying. You're getting confused too, just like I am, and you
Well,
gotta look it
because
up.
what I remember that time is spring. Things are starting to warm up,
Yep.
and we had been the surge is already kicking in Baghdad and the rest. Someone has finally started to pay attention to Diyala province, and they
Right.
started to send us out, and we're actually doing real reconnaissance work. Scouts doing reconnaissance work. Holy shit. It's amazing. This is what I've trained to do. We're out in palm groves. We're like
Yeah.
looking at bridges and shit. We're doing real reconnaissance. And we're out there for I don't remember, but anyway, it was up until March, and then we start Operation Issus and Minotaur, and those are to start the assaulting Cuba and to Zagania. It was like a 2 week mission that was and so Cuba we started, it was in March, it was late March, and I remember because the suicide bombing that killed Swiger and them was March 25th.
Right. That's
Charlie
when I
Troop,
was on leave.
yeah, and Charlie Troop had had their patrol base. I don't, I think that was Cop Coomer is what they were calling it. I'm not clear on that. I have to talk to some Charlie Troopers because again, they were kind of their own separate world at that time.
Yep.
Bravo Troop was staying out by Turkey, and I think they
Yep.
called that Cop Moulin Labe. And
Yep.
we
We built that
were
one.
at
Yep. That was after
Caldwell.
Turkey too.
Yeah, yeah, and then
Hard.
so that time frame, the spring, it's really hazy to me where we
Yeah.
were, what we were doing. We were around like a
Because we
place
were,
called Dura.
in our defense, we were getting pulled all over the place. Alpha
Yeah,
Troop was everywhere, everywhere.
yeah.
But one
Well,
of the
it
key
was
things we,
that reconnaissance. It was like find routes in and out of this place. In a month
yeah.
or two, we're going to start doing operations. But right now, in the interim, you're going to be spread to the wind, figuring stuff out and just collecting intel.
So after Turkey 2, the writing was on the wall that we had to go back to Warhorse at some point
Mm-hmm.
because the situation at Warhorse and with First Cav had gone that out of control. They had not just 20 dead, but they had well over
Mm-hmm.
150 wounded. And Al Qaeda really was in control of Bakuba.
Mm-hmm.
First Cav couldn't hardly even get out of their own way, let alone off the base to do missions. So we ran Turkey 2. We had a element of First Cav come with us. They brought in their heavy tanks. We at this time had our Bradleys. We had it was Alpha Troop and Charlie Troop had Bradleys, right? And
Yeah.
yep, and we were went out on Turkey 2 and we ran our missions. And in Turkey 2 we were that's when I got blown up really bad.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my truck disintegrated, and me and Bauer talked a lot about that night we were at Jeter's place because Bauer was up on the gun that day, and
Mm-hmm.
we were running the Mark 19, and the Bauer ripped the Mark 19 off the stovepipe. And I remember that. He's the only person I've ever known that ripped a 3-inch pipe into with his bare hands. Um, that's what you call adrenaline. And I
Was
was
Randolph was
asleep
on
in the
your truck,
back.
right?
Yeah, Randolph was driving for some reason.
Yeah,
Bauer was
yeah,
up.
okay.
So Sergeant G and I both were asleep. Sergeant G was up in the front. I was in the back seat. And we were both sleeping, and it was Bauer and Randolph. They were driving.
Mm-hmm.
Randolph was driving, and for some reason, Bauer was up behind the gun. And I don't know why we were in this configuration, but because it's not our normal configuration. We were moving along, and the back of our truck hit an anti-tank mine, and
Mm-hmm.
it cut the back of the truck clean off. It was just gone and disintegrated. And I remember I was sound asleep, and the next thing I know, like I'm like awake, and I can't see anything because there's so much dust and dirt flying. And I remember hearing Randolph go, "Hold on, I'll get us out of here." And he put the truck in for some reason wasn't he did something. He shifted the handle because I remember hearing him shift the handle, and he stomps on the gas up inside, up into my arm, around part of the quarter shaft on Bauer's foot, up into me again, up and around. And I'm like screaming, like, stop before you kill me. And if it wasn't for that little side plates that we
Mm-hmm.
had to put on our body armor, I think the drive shaft would have really killed me. Because it smashed one of those. The drive shaft smashed that
Mm-hmm.
thing. Um, and the whole back end of the truck was spinning. And at this time, the truck went from being flat and we sunk back into the
Mm-hmm.
anti-tank hole. And we're like, stop, 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 stop. And I remember like for some reason I had Elton John, Rocket Man, I'm about to take off because I'm Rocket Man, because I thought that truck was about to go flying.
Mm-hmm.
And there was nothing. If it wasn't for that sheet of plate that was right there, I would have been dead.
Mm-hmm.
And the seat
Yeah,
on the other
that
side behind Sergeant G, that seat was gone.
and that was the
And
seat where the medic usually rode.
yeah,
But the medics had been riding in the back of the Bradley, what we were using as fire support and
yep,
medevac vehicle if needed. And so,
yep,
just by dumb luck, Kavanaugh was spared by being in the back of the Bradley that night.
yep.
Yeah.
And And then the truck's in the hole, and the and we're sitting there, and I'm waiting for us to die, and nothing happens. It got eerie
Mhm.
quiet, and the dust settled, and we can see each other. And we're like, "You all right? Yeah. You all right? Yeah. Okay, we're all right. All right." And the next thing you know, Patterson's the window, and hanging on the lake is all right in there, and I'm like, "Rocket Man's about to go flying. We're all gonna die." And I didn't realize I was that far down into the hole, and
Mm.
that was really scary.
Mhm.
And so Bauer ended up climbing. Someone got on top of the truck. Three guys got up there, picked the Mark 19 and ammo off of Bauer because he'd ripped the stovepipe, and the Mark 19 had fallen onto him.
Mm.
They picked the Mark 19 off him, picked him out of the hole. Then Randolph could open his door, so he climbed out. Sergeant G could not climb out, so he slid up and out the door. And then the last person to come. And as I got out, finally settled down in, and we ended up shooting two guys. I don't know if they had actually planted the IED. I don't think they did. I think they were just Al Qaeda guys out wandering
Mhm.
around who just bumped into us and were like, "Holy shit, man." And you see the size of that explosion, it fucked you up. And you're like, yeah, you planted that thing like a month ago, didn't you? And you're like, yeah, we did. We didn't think
Mhm.
anyone was ever going to drive on it. And the weird thing is, like, all the Bradleys had already driven
Mhm.
over it and never set it off. I
Yeah.
don't know why my Humvee decided it was time to go. But I remember Sergeant G was so, and I was pissed too, because like we had like a brand new truck. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, we got a truck. It's got AC. It's gonna be so nice. Blew it off, and the next thing you know, we get like this hunk of junk, and we're like, what the
Mhm.
fuck is this thing?
Well,
But
that's
we
what happens if you destroy them. We're not going to give you nice things.
thanks, and
No, they were using the Italian-made anti-plastic anti-tank mines, so they would
yeah,
go through detectors easier. But
yeah,
they could set the fusing, and Al Qaeda wasn't dumb. People
no,
that say they're dumb, they weren't dumb. They had fused them to go off after about three different pressure detonations or pressure
oh,
sensitivities because they realized most of the command element was driving in a third vehicle. And they had done
oh,
that after Turkey won because observing how we had set patterns. And that's why the Bradley would roll over it, another Humvee would roll over behind it, and then the third one would go, and that would be the command truck. Or it would be, if nothing else, you split a convoy either way.
right,
So they were putting thought into what they were doing.
right. Oh yeah, no, Al Qaeda was. I mean, they were trying their best. I mean, it's just they
It's just they didn't have
they were
helicopters.
just fighting the Americans, and the Americans, we had a lot more resources and better
Mm-hmm.
training. So, I mean, we were just overwhelming them. But it is what it is. And this
When
this was the day that
Turkey,
it
going into
really
in, going to
this.
Turkey, we lost 12 vehicles to
Oh yeah.
mines and attacks like that. Like it wasn't a
Well,
simple thing.
after we got blown up, we were. This is when Mendoza
Mm-hmm.
and they got hit. Third platoon got hit, and they were fucked up. And that one blew up and into the truck itself. And Mendoza had his injury here. Was it
Mm-hmm.
Godoy had like big groin injuries? I remember Mail and I were both just standing there like, first aid is not on our repertoire, man. We are
Mm-hmm.
not the healing kind of guys, man. We put holes in people, so we were useless. But there was like an army of soldiers to load those guys up, man.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well,
uh,
for good and bad though, because they would set complex IEDs to
mhm.
hit first responders. And what's his name? Alexander. He was a surfer dude from California. He got blown up twice because he got blown up in a vehicle. Then he was outside being evaluated for concussion from the first IED, and there was another IED that went off
Mm,
nearby, and it was a secondary IED designed to kill the responders.
right. Well, I mean, this is when they also start stacking multiple
Mm-hmm.
IEDs in the IED holes with the idea of killing the EOD guys showing up to check the holes. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you're right. It's smart and it's well planned out. And I mean, This was a real fight. I've seen a few things where like the command sergeant major of the army's talking about, hey man, most people have never been in a gunfight like this, in a real fight. And I'm like, well, you weren't part of 573 because
Hmm.
that was a fight. And we really were in a very, very wicked gunfight. And the whole time we're getting blown up going into Turkey, you could feel like the moisture in the air growing and
Hmm.
growing and growing. And the rain was coming. And
Hmm.
when it rains in the desert,
Mm.
everything turns to mud. So when we
Yes.
got in, and this is again, few realized what was going on.
Hmm.
And we ended up pressing ahead of where we were supposed to be. He moved up our timetable a little bit, and I remember Bravo Troop was a little upset that we had advanced as far as we did.
Hmm.
But what ended up happening is we ended up sliding up to a position like a what I called the villa, and we ended up taking this villa where we could oversee all of Turkey from this high
Hmm.
point. And then it started raining. And as it rained, no one could move anymore. The
Hmm.
rain basically stopped everyone from moving. And and it turns into the only conventional battle in Iraq since the invasion, where we actually had
Mm.
legitimate battle lines. I remember Mike
Oh
Few
yeah.
sitting down, laying it out on a map in front of me, going, "All right,
Hmm.
Pavlik, we're here and they're there, so we're going to be here, and we can call on fire in all these places." And it was me and Myers up on the roof, and
Hmm.
we just started calling in everything. And
Oh yeah.
this is when I know we killed a lot of
Yep.
things because you were like, "Hey, we got F-15s, yeah. We got F-16s, yeah.
Hmm.
We got F-18s, yeah. We got B-52s, yeah. We got
Yep.
Apaches, yeah. We got artillery, yep. We got A-10s, yeah. We got Spectre, yep. I mean, it was just who's on station next,
Oh yeah.
and 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 we didn't run out of targets. Easiest thing, we never ran out of target. Always something was moving. Call it in and blow
Well,
it up.
the thing about Turkey was once everyone had started moving in and all the scouts, the Al Qaeda scouts had alerted everyone, and all the
Yep,
men from all the villages for miles around all fled into the Turkey Tamuz area and fortified it and prepared
yep.
to fight.
Yeah, they
So
knew we were
what would
coming.
have been, yeah, yeah, and they prepared a stand up fight.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah,
the fun fact about Iraq geography is the reason why that area is so fertile is because it's thousands and thousands of years of river overflooding. And
yeah,
so that creates a lot of silt. And
yeah,
silt, when it rains in Iraq, especially, becomes so thick, you
yeah,
cannot drive a tank through it. Literally, you cannot drive a tank through it.
yeah,
Unfortunately, and this was to Captain Few's credit, he pushed us up to within gun range of Turkey Village.
yeah.
So the Bradleys would just sit out at night and pop targets that were squirting away in the canals.
So
And
it was a
it's
weird situation. We pushed
oh yeah.
up and we took over the villa, and we had a group of IA with us, Iraqi army
Mm-hmm.
guys. And we were all kind of disorganized because like I said, we pushed up further than we were supposed to. And there was farm equipment all over the place, older farm equipment. And we were in this villa, and we're like, okay, hey, what's going on with these buildings way over here on this side? So we
Mm-hmm.
slid in the mortars, and I jumped on a truck with Sergeant Evans, big black guy,
Mm-hmm.
and we went flying down the berm because it hadn't started quite raining yet. And we pulled in, and the mortars were so amped up. Curtis was so pumped. He's like, we're gonna raid and we're gonna clear this building. And they went around the corner and went down a berm. And as they did, they hit quicksand, man. I can't think of
Mm-hmm.
any way of describing it better than that. And his truck just disappeared, just
Mm-hmm.
gone. And there's Curtis sitting in a turret, and there is nothing. I mean, it's just mud, and there is no truck. It's just his turret and gun sticking up. Like, what the fuck, Pavlik? And I'm like, holy shit, man. And and the crews are with us, and we got to hurry up and clear the buildings. And there's like a long string of barns. Is this? small little barns. So we ended up clearing these barns, and Evans and I were the only two guys to go on the one side. Everyone else went to the other side with camera crew for some reason was with us again,
Hmm.
and the camera crew was taking pictures of the mortars. And Workman, he's leading the way, and the mortars look really cool, and they're very proud of themselves. And Evans and I, they said we actually found a guy. We caught one of the Al Qaeda, scouts, and he had a little radio and a map, and he was gonna call in, and they were gonna mortar us, and it did not work out that way. At first I thought it was just a kid, and it turned out no, it's about a 20-year-old man, just a little rinky-dinky snot of a man, but it was a 20-year-old man. And we dragged him back to the our base, and we're interrogating him, and he's being all tough. He's like, I'm not talking to you. I'm not talking to anyone. And at this point, it really does start to rain. And the rain's coming down pretty good. And Kinsler and I were on this guy about talking and talking and talking. And at this point, the Bradleys are all pushing up. Here come the Abrams tanks. They're all
Hmm.
pushing up. Everyone's moving up, and Fuse organizing it perfectly. I mean, he's got everyone spaced out just right. First Cav, I mean, for being big army, when they get a targeted range and they can bring their guns to bear,
Hmm.
they're wicked. I mean,
Well,
really
do
wicked.
you remember on the radio, the Abrams kept
Yeah,
calling up and they're like, "Hey, we see some things," and whoever was on the radio was like, "Yeah, well, you can engage it," and they're like,
yeah, Sal.
"No, no, but we see enemies." They're like, "Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, you can engage it."
yeah,
No, no, are can we? Are you sure we can? Yeah, yeah. Or can we use the 120? Yeah, you can engage with
yeah,
your main gun. Are you are you sure? Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Fuck yeah, boys, let her loose. And then you start pounding it. It's like, yeah, dude, you're finally with a real army unit. You can use the toys you have.
Yeah,
Come
exactly.
play.
And
Like,
the first Cav guys were like, "This is awesome. This is
once they
so
got
cool."
good leadership under them,
Yes. Oh
they,
yeah. And
yeah, I don't
they
blame
were
the
they were
soldiers.
they
Yeah.
were they were great guys. They really were. They were just
With
in a terrible situation.
with one caveat, who the fuck was the unit that collapsed like the southern flank and decided they're just going back to Warhorse? And I don't remember. I won't even say the officer's name because I don't want to harm anyone's career. But they basically got on the radio and says, if you don't get back in fucking position right now, I'm going to order the Abrams to open fire on your Bradleys because someone retreated in the middle of Turkey and just decided we're going back to Warhorse for hot chow. Fuck your flank. Like,
Yeah. Well, so what ends up happening is once we get set up on this thing, we all of our
mm,
tanks are out there and it starts raining. Few hurries up and pushes his mortars down, and they pick up a flanking position so no one can scoot to the far side of us.
mm,
And we let it rain, and we're holding this one prisoner, and we drag, I think I can't remember if we dragged an LRAS up onto the roof or not. I don't think we did, but we were debating it.
they had the
And
Pfister
yeah,
binoculars. Yeah,
yeah. Well,
I don't
well,
know
we
what those
had
are
that,
called.
but combat, the cameraman were up there with us,
Mm,
and they were just like amazed at how fast we were calling in for fires, fire,
mm,
fire, 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 and that's what happened for the next 3 days.
mm,
We stayed there calling in for fires, and I remember the mud just kept getting
mm,
worse and worse and worse and worse. And first it was, well, it's bad, you can't really walk in it. And then it was, well, it's bad, but the Humvees are having trouble getting around. Okay. Then it was, it's bad, and the Bradleys can't get around. And then it turns into no one move because the mud is so thick. And Al Qaeda was having the same problem. We could
mm,
see them slipping and sliding in the mud, and no one could move. And the problem is, once we identified a spot, we just kept calling in fire. And there was a few times where we had Al Qaeda on a far side of a berm, and Captain Fuse like engaged them and told the Abrams tanks to engage them. And the Abrams tanks like, we got nothing that can punch through that. And Fuse like, fuck you, use your sable rounds. It goes through
mm,
6 feet of dirt. Well, we're not authorized to do that. And Few, I remember Few getting on the radio, fuck you are authorized. Engage them with Sabo. And this was the first time I'd ever heard Sabo go downrange. And
Hmm.
Sabo sounds weird when it screams downrange. And then all of a sudden, first cab opened up all over again. So all the tanks that were with us were going Winchestered on out of ammo
Yeah. Yeah.
on their things, and they call up and they go, "Hey, can we get some more ammo?" And I remember they call up and they go, "Yeah, yeah, we can get you Al's like, our XO's like, yeah, I can get more ammo. We'll have it flown in, man. Shit, the Black Ops will bring it in." And Sergeant G's like, "Well, fucking A, who in the hell's gonna deliver that shit? I ain't carrying that fucking 120 round out there to that fucking tank." Well, and there are photos, and I don't know if you can find them or not, where the Black Hawk comes in and literally landed
Mm.
almost on top of the tank, and you can see the Black Hawk crewmen handing rounds down to the to the tanker so that way they could stay up to thing. I know
Mm.
not Saban, uh, San Apollo has those photos. I don't know if anyone else has the photos, but San Apollo, I remember he got so muddy, but he made a point to get in position where he could get some photos of this because he knew it was going to be a very rare thing. But no one could move. And we stayed there and stayed there and stayed there. But this is also really one of the first times we got charged with war crimes because we had that prisoner, and I don't know if this is going to be edited or not by you, but we had the prisoner, and he was gang raped by the Iraqi soldiers that we had with us, and they tried to tell us that it was my fault and Captain Few's fault because we did not guard our prisoner, remember, the Abu Ghraib stuff. And we're like, he wasn't our prisoner. He was the Iraqi army's prisoner, and they happened to have raped him. But afterwards, Josh and I walk in there and be like, where are all the weapons caches? And the day before, he was like, I ain't telling you nothing. I ain't telling you nothing. Nothing.
Hmm.
Nothing. And the next day we walk in there and his asshole's this big around, and you're like, where are the weapon caches, or do you want us to leave? And we laid the map down. He goes, they're here, 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 here. There's a few guys over here. And he gave
Mm.
up everything. And then all of a sudden, we mark up the map. We walk it right back up to Captain Few. He's like, yep, let's call that shit in. Meyer, get over here.
Mm.
He puts on a regular Meyer, a whole nother round of rounds were called in, and we started all over again.
Mm.
More and more and more artillery was just getting dropped everywhere.
Mm.
And then the B-52 showed up with the 2,000-pound bombs, and at first it was supposed to be like 15 of them. And by the time the B-52s got there, it was supposed to be like one or two B-52s. And then it turned into about six B-52s, and it turned into about 30 bombs. And we lit that whole area up because these are 2,000-pound bombs. These are bigger than F-150s coming down, and they are just blowing the shit out of this town. And you got to keep in mind, with Turkey, 10th Special Forces had gone in there and didn't have any success. 7th Special Forces had gone in there with no success. Fifth Group had gone in there with no success. Delta Force had gone in there, done raids, no success. We had gone in there, had success, but it was limited. 101st had gone in there, and Petraeus just gave an order. He's like, wipe that fucking town out. And this is a bad place. The Wahhabis are bad guys. End it, end it for good. This is what the cavalry is meant to do. You guys are going to get bloody. So we did. Um,
Mm.
and the rain came. This is also when Bravo Troop got hit with friendly fire. There was, I think, an
Mm.
F-16 strafed them. And I remember Meyer and I both were up on the roof. And I'm like, is our guy screwing up or is it the pilot? And Meyer went down, did the same call, is it, but not on the radio, just did it in. And it was, Meyer's like, no, our guy is right. The F-16 is fucked. He is fucked up. And what's
Do you
happened
remember?
that day, Yeah. So
Do you
what
remember the
ends
name
up
of
happening?
the casualty?
Uh, no, I'm terrible
Well,
with names,
I
man.
know I want to say low
He was
tempo,
the
but I don't think
fister.
it was low tempo.
It was the fister for Bravo Troop, one of their main fisters. He's the guy who got strafed. Though,
I'll have to
what
look it
ends
up.
up happening is the area warmed up a little bit.
Mhm.
We, jumped up about 10 degrees, and the whole area turned into like a huge fog bank. And what probably should have happened is we should have ceased off firing for a little while and waited for the fog to clear. But Bravo Troop decided they were still going to call in some um, more strafing runs. So they were calling in strafing runs, and the pilot was trying to use line of sight rather than his
Mm,
instruments. So he was coming in at the wrong degrees. He's coming in at the wrong angle. I think he was supposed to come in from a northeast flight, and he was coming in from a southeast flight. And by doing so, the backdrop was Bravo Troop. So if he overshot the target with his
mhm.
gun, he was going to hit Bravo Troop. And he got waved off like two different times. And then he came around the third time and hit the target anyway, even though he was supposed to have been waved off, and he overshot, and then he ended up overshooting and nailing one of Bravo Troop's trucks with his minigun, and that really fucked up that truck. And they had a lot of casualties. Then the problem is how do you get the casualties out? Because we're so fogged in, the helicopters can't land. And it happened to be someone first cab was listening, one of the medevac guys, the colonel listening. And he's like, holy shit. And he knows right then it's the F-16 fucked up. So this colonel, everything's grounded. No one's moving. And this colonel's like, I'm coming. Uh, Jumps on his helicopter with his crew, says, we're going. Flies in, lands, gets our guy back out. But he did it just with the instruments. He couldn't see nothing.
I
Literally,
remember
it was just
that
white. Yeah.
he got a medal,
And
right? He got a medal for that,
that's
I
what
think.
saved him. Yeah. Yep.
I'll have
So
to look up the names if I
and
can.
then
Yeah.
things started drying out. Every- And, and finally move again. So now we move down into Turkey, and Turkey is decimated. I mean, we have
Mhm.
blown the shit out of this town. We've got buildings knocked down. We've got bodies everywhere. And this is a fucked up little town. Um, and what's crazy is they're still defiant.
Mhm.
We had blown the shit out of it, and we have like 150 prisoners, men, and two of the guys are on my blacklist, man. I'm like,
Mhm.
like we're going down the names of all the people, and I'm like, two of these names sound familiar. And I look over a few and I dig the list because I had the list in my pocket of there's the yellow names that we want to talk to. There are the red guys who are meant to be detained. And then there are the black guys who are tried and sentenced to death. So
Mhm.
in put this in context, in Iraq, you don't have to be present to be tried. And in Iraq, these people were being tried, convicted, and sentenced to death, even though they were not there at the time. So these people had already been sentenced to death by the Iraqi courts. Like, we know you're bad. We know who you are. We know where you are. We just haven't caught you yet. Once we catch you, we're going to kill you because you've been sentenced to death. So there are two guys on the list. And the Iraqi army guys, they're like, let's kill them. Hell yeah, man. We've been killing everything. And I'm kind of like, yeah, well, let's go ahead, man. We just blew up like 400 dudes. Okay, what's two more? Seriously, it's not that. Uh, but the Al Qaeda guys, um, if you know, we shouldn't this, and what ends up, but someone moved in one of the buildings, and bullets started falling out of the bench. And I'm not exaggerating when I say AK bullets start falling. You know, like we sat down on a bench and like clink, clink, clink. What the fuck? And you look underneath the bench, and literally AK bullets are falling out the bottom of this bench. And someone reached up on the wall and like poked at something like sticking out of the wall, and an RPG round starts sliding out of the wall. Like,
Mm,
what? And that's when we realized they had been arming everything. Everywhere you looked was a cache. Everywhere. Everywhere. Now there were massive caches hidden out in backyards and so forth around these buildings. But yeah, the whole area was, out to kill us. And at this point, Pappas makes the right decision, level the town.
mhm,
We didn't leave a building standing. We knocked down everything. We knocked down every hut. We knocked down every building. I've got personally have a shit ton of photos of an up armored bulldozer.
mhm.
Was a little Johnny there, and that bulldozer, he's driving over building, back up, drive over another building, in the way he was going. And I mean, we leveled that town, and that was one of the biggest blows to the Wahhabi movement that I have ever heard of.
Mhm.
Um, with that said, though, too, every person that walked out of that village and they went straight to a prison, and they became the backbone of ISIS. I mean, this is one of
Yeah.
the side effects of us
Yeah.
is we killed Al Qaeda, and in the
Hmm.
process ended up making ISIS.
Yep.
Um, and
They all came back years later
yep,
after having met each other and talked in prison.
4 years
Yep.
later, they're all out of prison. And
Yep.
what they didn't have was some organizational skills
Hmm.
on how to be generals and soldiers and politicians and do these things that you need to do to be effective at a much larger scale. Well, when they got into prison, who's in prison already? The Ba'ath members that we rounded up that Saddam had trained to run his country. There are
Hmm.
generals there, there are commanders there who know how to do stuff. The only thing you needed was to couple them with some crazy psycho religious hillbillies from the middle of Iraqi desert, and boom, there's ISIS waiting. And um, yeah, this is what happens. So, and that really is kind of the end of Turkey too.
Hmm.
After that, we went back a few weeks later and we built a base just outside of town to make sure it's all locked down. Bravo Troop ran a lot of missions out of there. They kind of took a page from Alpha Troop and like, hey, this is effective. Let's plant ourselves right here, and if you want to fight. But as far as I know, I mean they had some guys doing some bad things, but for the most part, the situation there in Turkey kind of just fizzled after that. I mean, we cleaned it out, um, and we burnt that town to the ground, and
Hmm.
honestly, it was the right thing to do. I mean, in hindsight, though, if we had finished off those 150 guys, would ISIS have ever really been? It's a weird situation because you're in a situation where you spared a whole bunch of lives, and you didn't realize that if you had just been a little bit more violent, you would have saved even
Yeah.
more lives later on. It's an
It's
odd situation.
it's such a hard question.
Yeah.
Um, you can't predict the future,
No. No.
but also seeing that history going back to the early 90s and how they were a poison pill, and at every step of the way, anytime someone could have intervened and
Yep.
they intervened on the peaceful side,
Yep.
it just empowered these people further. And then we come along and you don't want to think of yourself as an executioner.
No. No.
But at the same time, look what happened afterwards.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
I,
Exactly.
I keep coming back to the philosophical principle of wicked problems about some things don't have a good answer. There isn't necessarily a good answer,
Well,
and
when I look at this one, it's it. the guys from 573, we kind of get poised in the same thing that Tandy did when here's a hero from World War One who unexpectedly has his rifle pointed at Adolf Hitler in World War One,
Hmm.
and he didn't know Adolf Hitler was going to be what he was, 15 years later, but he spared Adolf Hitler at that time, and if he had known, he just would have pulled the trigger, and it'd have been one more dead Kraut in the trenches of World War One. And
Hmm.
instead, he spared him, and then the guy goes on to kick off World War Two. So, I
Yeah, I
mean,
guess one way to look at it is our own morality is our own choice and what we do in the here
yeah,
and now with each choice. And we can't
yeah,
predict what's going to happen beyond that. And that is the other
no,
person's morality. It does so interesting. And it's something, well, in the Kinzer talk, I think I've published this part of it where we talk a little bit about the baby killer. And that's something I'd like to get into with you, but
yeah,
probably in a second session
yeah,
at this point.
oh
But it's
yeah,
the
that
same
that
kind of
happens.
question. Yeah, you have someone who is abjectly evil, they're evil, they revel in evil, and there are guidelines to your boundaries of action. And sometimes again there aren't easy answers to the questions. And I know because we got to wrap up pretty quick because I got to get to my day job here. But I remember when we got back to Bragg, you took, I forget exactly, but it was me, Jones, maybe Diaz. You took a lot of the squad over to mental health right away to get us checked in.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I remember immediately we were kicked out of mental health because the numbers of people checking in were too high for that month. And we were told, with the brigade coming back, the numbers are too high and we can't have that many numbers of people with fucked up mental health. Well, and it's insane because on the one hand, when we discuss these things, we are talking about our mental health. We're talking about our emotional health. Obviously, I can see your reaction right now, remembering
mhm,
these things and living through these
yeah,
things. I do mine in my own way as well. There are things that still eat at you in different ways, or they weigh on you in different ways, and you can't
yeah,
always express it with people that weren't there, don't understand. And then when you try and get the help for it, or you know, people come back with a lot of different it's a malformed thought that I haven't put to voice yet, which is why I'm kind of struggling with this. But I'm trying to tie it back to what we were just saying is like when you take that moral quandary and try and tell it to like a therapist or someone,
yeah. I know.
yes, they understand it on an intellectual level, but not having stood in the mud looking at someone who has tortured women and children and is
Oh yeah,
going to well in the future will go and torture women and children again.
yeah,
Like what is morality? It really makes you question morality in
yeah,
ways that I don't have good answers for to this day.
yeah. I don't know if there is a good answer to them. The only thing I know is, at the time we were making the best choices that we could,
Mm-hmm.
and we had spent almost 4 days just pounding a village into the Stone Ages. And I'm not kidding when I say we pound, even first Cav came out and was like,
Mm-hmm.
damn, guys, this is bad. And then find out, hey, we probably should have done more. And you're
Mm-hmm.
like, and that's the ironic thing. Um, and I think first off, you're right. This is a good stopping point, because up until this point, this is getting close to the end of what I consider our second deployment, um, and we're about to go back to uh, to Warhorse and to Zaganea, and things are going to get hard.
Yeah, the next section, the next spring, spring of 2007, it
Yeah.
gets interesting.
Well,
You start getting involved with the intel. We get
yeah.
involved a lot with the Wahhabis, with Al Qaeda.
Oh,
There's a lot of
yeah.
twisting and turning with all that shit. But then
Yeah.
also we started losing people like
Oh,
every
yeah.
2 weeks. Every 2 weeks, it was almost on the fucking dot. And
And
just
not only that
emotionally,
is
that spiral.
I was thinking about this, how many vehicles we blew through. It was literally
Mm-hmm.
we were losing a vehicle almost every other day for
Mm-hmm.
almost 3 weeks straight. That's
Oh
how
yeah.
much we were getting blown up. Um, and it was just wild. And up until this point in a brutal deployment. Once we go back to Zeg and we to Zeg, I think this is where, yeah, it's hard talking about this shit, man. It's fun to talk
Mm-hmm.
about the fun stuff. It's not so much fun to talk about the bad stuff. I
It
like
is.
talking
That's
about I like talking about Diaz being
yeah.
Diaz. You
No, that's why I really appreciate you
and
talking about these with me
the fat
because
guy from the 82nd.
like I really appreciate you discussing this with me though because these are the
Yeah.
things that I really do feel need to be said, like it's hard. It's really hard. And it's things that are it's the quiet side. And like I don't think
Yeah.
people understand that the fun side isn't as fun if you don't balance it off. And the other part that I want to try and get with all the interviews is kind of a meta
Mhm.
thing. Is by the end of it, each individual story, in a way, at a higher pattern level, it kind of puts an understanding that by the end of deployment, how you start to lose your identity as an American and start to gain an identity that is
Mhm.
different and more closely aligned to I don't want to say Iraqi, but it's more closely aligned to being something new that's more in touch with
Well,
overseas. And it's very weird because you go through this personal shift of yourself of 15 months of going from being this to suddenly starting to understand the world you're in a different, unique way that makes
yeah.
you also not understand the world you came from.
Well, we're getting calloused. I mean, that's a part of it
Mm-hmm.
too, is you just get callous to the violence. And this is something that happened. I realized it was well, first off, when I was going through SF land, I realized that they were mentally conditioning me to do violence.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we got deployed, the violence just became a routine part of life. And, at first you were kind of like shocked when you see like a body alongside the road. And then it gets to a point like, oh, there's only one. What happened to it? And then you start, it doesn't bother you that that there's bodies mutilated everywhere or whatever there happens to be. It just becomes routine.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're the one causing some of it. And then that just becomes routine and you get comfortable with it. And then the other side of this whole thing is there's something very exhilarating about being in combat.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to describe. It's
It's
part of the reason
fun
why,
as long as you're winning.
yeah, well, even when you're not winning,
Yeah.
there's reason why a lot of combat vets come back when we're such adrenaline junkies is
Mm-hmm.
because you get addicted to this and it just becomes natural that, hey, I'm supposed to do this and I can do this whenever I want, however I want. And it just fits. And you, like I said, you become comfortable with violence and things going on. And it's just the world you're part of now. And,
You know
that's,
what's
it takes a
crazy?
long time to get that out of you.
This summer I caught myself
Yeah.
doing it. At the reunion, I lost most of the pictures I had taken on accident.
Mhm.
Using a new camera, it takes
Oh, well,
longer
that
for them
sounds
to
wonderful.
process. It takes longer for them to process to the memory card, and I keep forgetting about that. Um, but the reason why I caught myself, what I do it is I would shoot with the camera, and then when I would let it hang on a strap, I would immediately turn it off because I
Oh.
realized that mentally I've made that trigger onto safety as with the
Hmm.
firearm. And I have still carried that to this day where it's automatic, not even thinking about it because it's still a similar motion. Aiming, down, it's safe, put it on safe. It's still from all the shoot houses and all the training we've done, it's still ingrained into me. So now I have to remember to break the habit of flicking the trigger to safe or not, because
Yeah.
that's turning my camera off. But it's just weird when you say that, you become accustomed to it. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
you do in ways that you
Well,
don't even realize you do.
and well, with me, it's like talking about it brings out an emotional response. I know
Yeah.
if I'm back doing or in some of these things,
Hmm.
I'll become cold as ice again, and I
Yeah.
will. I mean, no ice water things that happens is you it becomes so you know, like you
Ah, your
you
internet likes to cut out like right when
don't
you're saying interesting things.
and you're just like this is how life is now. And so all right, well, like I said, this is a good stopping spot. So in the next one though, the next deployment, we'll be back at Zagania. And things will get crazy. This is where 573, I think, really does make its legend known that, hey, you are something different. Up until this point, we're just a really effective combat unit.
Hmm.
In when we return to Zagany, almost they scrub out you from crazy to, and this is when I start telling about the no, no, that didn't happen. But oh, it did.
Yeah.
It so
No, I agree. I like Turkey Battle of Turkey is where we got our presidential unit citation, but I honestly think that the Diyala campaign after Turkey is where the unit really starts to shine because that's where all the intricate pieces and intricate personalities and things that were
yeah,
built really come up. We've been tested by battle already.
yep,
We've been tested. All those things have now finally come to mesh, and now they can be put into play with collecting the
yep.
intel, putting it out there, and working closer to I don't know. I don't want to say like how a special forces unit would work, but it's closer to the intel on the ground, living with people, living amongst who you're working with. It just it becomes something different in itself, and that was a very special thing.
Oh, I not only are we well, what we do is we take what was Special Forces was doing and we amplified it. And even Special Forces could not do what we were doing. Maybe they could generate the entire ag on it. Um, oh,
Shoot, well, Steve, I'm gonna stop the recording now because I think that your internet is getting worse and worse, and I don't know how much of this is even gonna come through.
okay.
All right, thanks, man.
Okay, well, if we got to we can repeat, so it's not a
Yeah,
big deal, man.
no worries. All right, thanks.